Chapter 333. What was Shen Yuan scheming? But he was not in the Shen residence all day, so Shen Miao could not pry it out. Young lady need not worry. That's right. Jing just suddenly remembered something. Tao Yuan said that Biao young lady had sent an invitation over and had received a reply, so she will head over tomorrow. Shen Miao's eyes brightened. Very good. Shen Yuan made her feel uneasy, so some things had to be done as soon as possible. While they were discussing on this end, at the Feng Xian pawn shop's Linjiang Immortal Tower, there were also people discussing this matter. Shen Yuan had already collected Shen Xian's evidence and presented it all to Fu Xiuyi. Ji Yushu said, 3 days later Fu Xiuyi will sort it out and present it to the emperor. At that time, the Shen family will surely not be able to escape this calamity. Disobeying the emperor's orders, obeying on the surface but disobeying in secret. If this kind of matter is uncovered, the lightest punishment would be to be disarmed and returned to the countryside. Gao Yang said, this Shen Yuan from the Shen family also has some ability to be able to find this kind of thing. Did not one say it already? Ji Yushu was somewhat impatient. Shen Yuan had already dealt with Shen Xian for many years and had been planning and waiting to be put to use. Once the meritorious service was recorded, one would be promoted and get rich. If it wasn't for the fact that we made it in time this time, the first branch of the Shen family would have been executed after he had searched for another 2 years. So to say, Fu Xiuyi indeed has good foresight. Gao Yang pondered, Shen Xian's power is too great and there are too many people who want to deal with him. The most important thing is that the imperial family of Ming Qi would be happy to see it happen. When Shen Xian is unlucky, the imperial family would step on him. So what should be done now? Ji Yushu had a headache. Shen Yuan, this kind of person, knows how to endure and has the same nature as that Fu Xiuyi. Shen family's first household is unlucky. Miss Shen must be very sad. You still think of Shen Miao? Gao Yang rolled his eyes at him. If it was not for Shen Miao urging their Shen residence's cousins to catch Shen Yuan in bed, Shen Yuan would not have acted so quickly. Originally, with his nature, he would have endured for another 2 years to catch the first household of the Shen family in one fell swoop. Now that he took action in advance, it was only because he was forced by Shen Miao. Gao Yang touched his chin. With Shen Yuan's hatred towards Shen Miao, he would not let Shen Miao off easily this time. Perhaps the rest of the first household of the Shen family would be able to keep their lives, but Shen Miao's ending would definitely be very miserable. Ji Yushu anxiously scratched his ears and cheeks. Then what to do? Shen Yuan, that bastard, would not use any underhanded methods on young lady Shen. He even schemed against his own uncle, so his heart must be black-hearted. Do not worry. Gao Yang said unhurriedly, Shen Yuan's heart is completely black and Shen Miao is also not someone that is easy to deal with. This time I was very curious what kind of method Shen Miao would use to turn the tide. With her character of exterminating the entire Prince Yu residence in one move, one would feel that she would not just surrender without putting up a fight. Young Miss Shen is resourceful. Shen Yuan will definitely not be able to beat her. Ji Yushu suddenly thought of something and looked at Gao Yang. Before third brother Xia left, he did not allow us to intervene in the Shen family's matters, so if she wins, you are not allowed to help Shen Yuan. You're quite confident in her. Gao Yang opened his fan and waved it. But I'm also curious to see what she's going to do. Seeing Ji Yushu's relieved expression, Gao Yang mercilessly poured cold water on him, but you must not be too assured. Ever since Third Xia's plan was brought forward, the situation in the Ding capital had changed a lot. There is one thing that would not change, and that is Prince Ding's ambition. How would he not make good use of the fat meat that the Shen family sent to his doorstep? No matter how capable Shen Miao is, she is still an unmarried female and Prince Ding is not as stupid as Prince Yu. It would be difficult for one person to contend against so many forces. Shen Xian's official hat would most likely be lost, and once Shen Xian loses his official hat, He was half sighing and half lamenting, for the first household of the Shen family, it would be a disaster. He would not be able to protect any of the people that he wants to protect. Chapter 334. Ji Yushu's expression also slowly sank. Third Xia once said that no matter what, the first household of the Shen family would not be able to escape the fate of destruction. Gao Yang stopped fanning and his eyes slightly flashed, just like the Xia family. On the second day, the weather was fine and in the side courtyard of Rong Jingtang, Tao Yuan took out a few pieces of clothing for Jing Chu Chu to choose. Ever since the Jing family's husband and wife came, the courtyard that old Shen Furen previously gave to Jing Chu Chu and younger sister became somewhat crowded. The Jing couple entered the house and unreasonably occupied the biggest courtyard in Rong Jingtang other than old Shen Furen's. Other than that, they even ordered the servants in Rong Jingtang around. If one did not know, one would think that the one staying in Rong Jingtang was not old Shen Furen but the Jing couple. Jing Chu Chu sat in front of the table and carefully drew her brows in front of the bronze mirror. Every stroke of her brush was extremely serious. Her lips were pursed with a touch of rouge, and her hair was combed neatly. It was obvious that she had dressed up meticulously. "It is that moon-white one," Jing Chu Chu said. Her moon-white clothes were plain and clean, but it could better display her delicate and pitiful temperament. Today was the day that she was going to meet Sun Kai-nan. Whether or not Sun Kai-nan could not forget about her depended on this. Perhaps it was because of a woman's vanity, or perhaps it was because she truly had some affection for Sun Kai-nan. Even though she knew that meeting Sun Kai-nan now was extremely risky, she still wanted to give it a try. Tao Yuan put away the rest of the clothes. Someone pushed the door open and came in. It was Madame Jing. When Jing Furen saw Jing Chu Chu's dressing, she was somewhat puzzled. "Chu Chu, you are going out?" "I want to go out and buy some jewelry." Jing Chu Chu complied. In the future, since one will become the young Furen of the Shen family's second household, one cannot wear the previous jewelry as one will be looked down upon by others. "That should be the case," Madame Jing said. Anyway, Jing Chu Chu's money to buy the jewelry would be spent from the public purse, thus these days Jing Furen had also made a lot of money. Madame Jing said, "How can you go alone?" "I will go with you." "No." Jing Chu Chu quickly refused. Madame Jing was puzzled. "Why?" I agreed to go with Miss Yi." Jing Chu Chu shook Jing Furen's hand. In the future in the Ding capital, one must build a good relationship with these young ladies. "Mother, you don't have to go. Miss E doesn't like to meet strangers casually. You know that these noble young ladies have strange temperaments." Madame Jing was a little dissatisfied. What noble family's young lady, what's so great about it? In the future, you will still be the wife of an official. Forget it, since you want to build a good relationship, then go ahead. Bring a few more guards with you. "No need." Jing Chu Chu declined. "There are so many guards in the Yi family, how would it look if I bring them over?" "Mother, don't worry about it. When I come back, I'll buy you some jewelry." After saying that, he continued to draw his eyebrows. Madame Jing could only give up. When they left the residence and boarded the carriage, Jing Chu Chu's heart was somewhat nervous as she asked Tao Yuan, "Is the restaurant that you chose reliable or not?" "Don't worry, Mississippi," Tao Yuan said, "that restaurant is very far away and remote. Usually, very few people go there. Xiao Jiu is wearing a bamboo hat and her face is covered, so no one will recognize her." Jing Chu Chu then calmed down. The carriage passed through the southern part of the city and finally stopped in front of a remote alley. Jing Chu Chu straightened her bamboo hat and adjusted her veil before walking towards the restaurant with Tao Yuan's support. Even though Jing Chu Chu often wandered around with young masters when she was in Suzhou, but now her identity was different. Ming Chi's folkways were open, but for a female who already had a fiancé to meet with other males in private, it was not a small crime. That restaurant only had 2 floors and was really, as what Tao Yuan said, remote and deserted. The guests were in 2s and 3s and it was not crowded. Seeing that she came in, Tao Yuan gave the innkeeper an ingot of silver and said with a smile, "Innkeeper, where is the guest room that was booked yesterday?" Chapter 335. The shopkeeper quickly instructed the waiter to bring Jing Chu in. The guest room on the 2nd floor was the last one and the attic was made of wood. Tao Yuan thanked the waiter and helped Jing Chu into the room. Upon entering the room, Jing Chu could not wait to take off her bamboo hat and veil. "I am suffocated to death. Young lady should first take a break and drink some tea." Tao Yuan said, "One think that gentleman's son would be arriving soon. Come over and help me tidy up my hair." Jing Chu first fiddled with the bronze mirror. Just now the bamboo hat was worn all the way and the hair was messed up. "Young lady is very good looking." Tao Yuan complimented, "Today you are even more beautiful." Just as she was speaking, the door opened with a creak. Jing Chu and Tao Yuan could not help but be surprised for a moment before hearing a familiar voice. Chu, it is really you." Sun Kai Nan stood at the door and looked eagerly at Jing Chu. Jing Chu's face suddenly turned red and she looked at Tao Yuan with a rebuking look. "You can leave." "All right." Tao Yuan smiled. "Gentleman's son and young lady can speak first. This servant will guard at the door and no one will come in." With such words, it seemed to be hinting at something. Jing Chu lowered her head and after Tao Yuan went out and closed the door, Sun Kai Nan took 2 steps forward and called out, "Chu." Jing Chu hesitated for a moment before looking up. There seemed to be a little bit of water in her eyes, half melancholy and half attachment. If Shin Miao was present at this moment, one feared that she would have to admire Jing Chu's acting at this moment. Sun Kai Nan walked in front of Jing Chu and said softly, "Chu, is it true that you and Shin Yuan are engaged?" Jing Chu paused before nodding her head. "You?" Sun Kai Nan seemed to have suffered a huge blow and took 2 steps back. When Jing Chu saw this, her eyes immediately turned red and she timidly said, "You are angry?" "No." Sun Kai Nan paused and suddenly reached out to touch Jing Chu's face. He said, "I have heard about the matter. It was Shin Yuan, that fellow, who forced you. You had no choice but to marry him. I do not blame you and am not angry with you." Hearing this, Jing Chu lowered her head but no one saw the trace of pride that flashed in her eyes. Sun Kai Nan must have truly admired her and even if she was to marry Shin Yuan, he still could not bear to blame her. Actually, Jing Chu turned her head away. "That day's second Biao older brother did not touch me but it was hard to explain under the watchful eyes of everyone." She lowered her head. "Gentleman's son, actually I am still a virgin." Nothing actually happened between Jing Chu and Shin Yuan that day. It was just that the way they hugged each other was hard to explain in the eyes of the crowd. Afterwards Jing Chu looked for someone to take a look and she was still a virgin. It was just that Shin Yuan and old Shin Furen did not know about it, so she did not say anything else. If old Shin Furen and Shin Yuan knew about it, they would definitely make a big fuss. But when Sun Kai Nan spoke of this matter, the situation was very different. Men would always hope that their own female was innocent. If Jing Chu and Shin Yuan really had something, Sun Kai Nan's heart would have a knot in his heart, but if there was nothing, then in Sun Kai Nan's eyes, he would feel even more pity for Jing Chu. Sure enough, Sun Kai Nan was stunned when he heard this. "What?" Jing Chu raised her head and said tearfully, "A female's body naturally needs to be given to the person that one admires. Second Biao older brother and I only have a misunderstanding, but in the future there is no other way out. I and gentleman's son met too late. Will gentleman's son dislike me in your heart? Sun Kai Nan pulled Jing Chu Chu into his embrace and comforted her in a warm voice. How would I dislike you? I am pleased with you, love you, and like you. A look of ecstasy flashed in Sun Kai Nan's eyes. He had thought that since Jing Chu Chu's innocence was given to Shen Yuan, sleeping with Jing Chu Chu again would only be taking back his capital. Who knew that Jing Chu Chu was a virgin, and this made him surprised. Chapter 336. Jing Chu Chu was hugged by Sun Kai Nan and pretended to struggle a few times before no longer moving. But she allowed Sun Kai Nan to hold her and slowly untie her skirt. Coincidentally downstairs, someone rode a horse to the front of the restaurant and handed the horse to the waiter outside to tie it up. He walked in, and when he was in front of the innkeeper, he gave an ingot of silver and walked up by himself. It was the waiter who saw him and shouted, "Gentlemen." That person turned his head back. It was not anyone else but Shen Yuan. What is the matter? Shen Yuan asked. The waiter quickly shook his head and ran downstairs with a towel on his shoulder. In the instant that he passed by, Shen Yuan could clearly hear the waiter whispering, "Everyone in the world knows that one is wearing a green hat." So pitiful. Shen Yuan's footsteps paused and looked down. He saw that the gazes of the customers downstairs were faintly discernible on him, as if they were pointing at something. Shen Yuan's expression gradually turned gloomy. This was the restaurant that he frequented, and he would occasionally pass messages with Fu Xiuyi's people here. There were a total of 9 princes in the Ding capital, and their relationships were complicated. Prince Ding was the one who hid the deepest, so his subordinates must be careful. Every time Shen Yuan came, he would be very careful and would occasionally change his clothes so no one would recognize him. But why was the situation somewhat strange now? He shook his head and went up to the second floor, which was the place where he would meet with Fu Xiuyi's people. But when he came to the last room, he saw a familiar person for the first time. When Tao Yuan saw him, she jumped in shock. Shen Yuan's heart sank. Tao Yuan was Jing Chu Chu's maid, so why would she be here? Could it be? He lifted his feet and wanted to walk in. Tao Yuan could not dodge in time and was kicked open by Shen Yuan's foot. One saw that in the spacious room, there were 2 people overlapping on the soft couch, and the floor was filled with clothes. It was as charming could be. Tao Yuan exclaimed, "Young lady, second young master is here." The person on the bed suddenly sat up and half of her snow-white body was exposed. It was Jing Chu Chu. She looked at Shen Yuan helplessly and said, second older Biao brother." Shen Yuan looked at him coldly, and the other person on the bed, Sun Kai Nan, also slowly woke up and sat up. He was raised up by others and was interrupted when he was being intimate with Jing Chu Chu, so he was very angry in his heart and said, "Who are you?" "Second cousin." Jing Chu Chu suddenly recovered to her senses and pointed to Sun Kai Nan, "Second Biao older brother, it was he who forced me. I was not willing." "Bitch." Sun Kai Nan sneered and gave a slap on Jing Chu Chu's face. "It is obviously you who eagerly invited me over. What is the matter? Fall out and not recognize others. Young master son." Tao Yuan rushed over with righteous indignation. "How can you treat Miss like this? Why are you doing this to the young lady? Could it be that it was to make my second young master wear a green hat? You must go against second young master like this." Amidst the chaos, no one actually noticed that there was something wrong with Tao Yuan's words. Sun Kai Nan sneered, "Second young master." He looked up and down at Shen Yuan and smiled arrogantly, "Correct. I did make your second young master wear a green hat. How about it?" Xin Yuan, you have not tasted the taste of this fiancé of yours. The taste of a virgin is still not bad. You are talking nonsense. Tao Yuan was surprised for a moment. My young lady, you all still do not know. Sun Kai Nan looked at Xin Yuan exaggeratedly, no wonder to be played in the palm of a female. But second young master Xin, even if you have great abilities in court, your woman was still slept by me. Moreover, you still have to marry her. How is the feeling of picking up used shoes? The veins on Xin Yuan's forehead bulged and he finally took 2 steps forward and punched Sun Kai Nan to the ground. You dare to hit me? Sun Kai Nan was also used to being pampered and did not say anything further as he climbed up and pounced towards Xin Yuan. Both of them did not have a military background and could only rely on their direct thoughts as they punched each other. Sun Kai Nan was taller and stronger than Xin Yuan, so Xin Yuan was gradually at a disadvantage and was being suppressed by Sun Kai Nan. Scoundrel! Tao Yuan rushed over and helped Xin Yuan to hug Sun Kai Nan from behind. Xin Yuan took advantage of the gap and managed to free his hands but felt an icy cold thing stuffed into his hands. He was beaten up badly. Without thinking, he pushed the thing in front of him. A "chi" sound was heard. That sound was exceptionally long and the surroundings seemed to be still until Tao Yuan's long scream and Jing Chu Chu's flustered face appeared in front of him. Xin Yuan looked down and saw that his hands were holding onto a silver hilt. There was only the hilt and the rest of the blade was in Sun Kai Nan's lower abdomen and nothing could be seen. Large patches of blood flowers bloomed. Sun Kai Nan fell face up. Chapter 337. In front of the stone table in the western courtyard of the Xin residence, Xin Miao was playing chess with Xin Qiu. It was rare that Xin Qiu did not need to practice his swordplay and knew that Xin Miao's chess skills had improved by leaps and bounds. Xin Qiu had been rubbing his palms for a long time just to win against Xin Miao. However, the outcome was not as he wished. Xin Miao placed a black piece and Xin Qiu's tyrannical white pieces were surrounded by the surrounding black pieces and could not get out. Xin Qiu stared blankly for a long time before asking Xin Miao, "Younger sister, is this not the path that I used in the first game?" He felt that the path on the chessboard was somewhat familiar and the more he looked, the more surprised he was. Xin Miao was slowly restoring the path that he used in the first game. It was just that Xin Miao used it better. At least in this game, she used this path with great proficiency and murderous aura, giving others a taste of their own medicine. Xin Miao smiled gently, "Eldest brother, can you think of a countermeasure for your own things?" Xin Qiu shook his head. "This method of mine is used against the enemy and it is a dead end. Younger sister, let me think of a countermeasure, but I am unable to find one." Xin Miao looked at the crisscrossing path on the chessboard and smiled faintly. In the previous life, Xin Qiu killed Sun Kai Nan and was imprisoned a few years later, so it was assumed that Xin Yuan's plotting was more or less Xin Yuan's doing. One did not know if the exact same method was used back. Would Xin Yuan find it familiar? This dead end that he set for Xin Qiu, could Xin Yuan solve it himself? It should not be possible. When Xin Qiu scratched his head and was about to place his piece, he suddenly saw a person rushing in from outside the courtyard. It was the second-rank maid who was in charge of sweeping. That maid's face was full of panic as she said in a panic, "Not good, eldest young master and fifth young lady. Second young master is outside killing someone." "What?" Xin Qiu frowned, and a chess piece fell down. It spun on the ground and finally landed on the ground. Xin Miao bent over to pick up the chess piece and looked at the maid before asking warmly, "Who did he kill?" In the capital governor's prison, Xin Yuan was locked in the innermost room. His hands and clothes were all shockingly dyed red with blood and his face was also somewhat purple. This was the first time that Xin Yuan had fallen into such a difficult situation. When he was fighting with Jing Chu Chu's adulterer, one did not know why there was a very irritable feeling in his heart, as if his mind was somewhat hot. By the time he woke up, Sun Kai-nan had already been stabbed to death by his knife, and that restaurant was a wooden loft. The battle between the two of them had alarmed quite a number of people, and Tao Yuan's and Jing Chu-chu's screams almost immediately exposed this murder case in front of everyone. Only now did Shen Yuan's heart gradually calm down. In the end, he was too impulsive today. Shen Yuan had been conceited all his life, and what he hated the most was people using his dignity to humiliate him. The matter of the Shenfu's family banquet had already made him feel humiliated enough, but it was because he had not woken up at that time that he had endured it. Now that the entire Ding capital knew that he wanted to marry Jing Chu-chu, but Jing Chu-chu was still outside putting on a green hat for him, and the people in the restaurant seemed to be pointing fingers at him. Shen Yuan was almost unable to control his anger. One did not know where Jing Chu-chu was brought to, but since this matter started because of her, one think that Jing Chu-chu's ending would not be easy. It was just that. Shen Yuan was still somewhat strange. How did the people in the restaurant know him and Jing Chu-chu? Why did Jing Chu-chu pick his room when she was adulterer? He faintly felt that something was not right, but he quickly shook his head. That place was the place where he and Fu Xiuyi's people met, and other than Fu Xiuyi's people, no one else would know about it. Shen Yuan thought deeply that Fu Xiuyi's people had reached the restaurant and most likely knew about the matter. At this moment, he had completely calmed down, and those flustered emotions had vanished. The bloodstains on his clothes and the gloomy prison did not make his expression waver. Chapter 338. Just at this moment, one saw a jailer walking over and stopped in front of his cell door. Shen Yuan looked up and cried out in surprise, "Dong Hao." Dong Hao was the person who was supposed to make contact with him. At this moment he had changed into a jailer's attire, and it seemed that he had sneaked in to talk to him. "Listen to me. This matter is a misunderstanding." Shen Yuan quickly said, "This time will your highness help me? In the future I will definitely repay your highness." Shen Yuan never expected that Shen Gui would come over to save him. Shen Gui was a person who would do anything to protect his career, so how would he take risks for him? Now the only one who could help him was Fu Xiuyi, but the people of the imperial family did not value friendship and righteousness, thus he could only prove his value. Shen Yuan said, "The evidence that was given to your highness is still somewhat incomplete, and your highness will soon submit a memorial to his majesty. One hope that your highness will think of a way to rescue me out and let me complete the last stroke for your highness." When Dong Hao heard it, his eyes moved. Shen Yuan's words clearly meant that the evidence that was against Shen Exan to Fu Xiuyi was not complete. Shen Yuan had left a card up his sleeve as he feared that Fu Xiuyi would burn the bridge after crossing the river, but he did not expect that he would be in prison today and could only take out his life-saving talisman in advance. Seeing that Dong Hao did not speak, Shen Yuan was somewhat anxious. This matter is only a misunderstanding and is not difficult to handle. I can fork out the money myself, and as long as your highness gives a greeting to that side, this matter had happened before. A large part of the reason why Shen Yuan was so calm was that this matter did not look that bad. It was even simpler than the Shen residence's family banquet matter. The Shen residence's family banquet matter was because he slept with Jing Chu-chu in front of all the Furins, and no matter what, Jing Chu-chu would suffer a loss. Moreover, the Jing family was too unreasonable and he had no other way. Moreover, when he killed Sun Kai-nan, only Jing Chu-chu and her maid saw it. As long as Jing Chu-chu and the maid testified, he could still escape. As for that adulterer, he only needed to give some money to appease him and let Fu Xiuyi's people casually put a charge on him, like that person wanted to assassinate Shen Yuan and was restrained by Shen Yuan. When killing someone, as long as it was not a noble family, it could be covered up in the end. Moreover, his identity at the moment had not been discovered. In other people's eyes, they only knew that someone had been killed, but they didn't know who it was. Dong Hao shook his head and said, "Shen Yuan, you've gotten into big trouble this time." Shen Yuan's smile that had just floated up abruptly stopped as he did not understand Dong Hao's meaning. "Do you know who you killed?" A bad premonition rose in Shen Yuan's heart. In the darkness, he saw Dong Hao slowly open his mouth. "It's the only legitimate son of the Minister of Personnel, Sun Tianzhang's son, Sun Kainan." At the entrance of the general estate, there was a large group of people surrounding it at this moment. These people were all holding rods and had fiendish appearances. Even the Qin family guards at the entrance were somewhat unable to stop them. In the room, Shen Yu hid in Chen Rochio's embrace and trembled in fear. "Mother, did second older brother really kill someone?" As Chen Rochio comforted her, she had some doubts in her heart. Those people outside claimed to be the Minister of Personnel's people and said that Shen Yuan had killed the Minister of Personnel's son, Sun Kainan, and were clamoring to come in and smash things up. But why would Shen Yuan kill Sun Kainan without rhyme or reason? Shen Gui and Shen Wan were already outside blocking them. If it was not for Shen Xian's Shen family army, one feared that those people would really barge in. Wan Yinyang was hiding in the small room and was somewhat nervous as she pulled Shen Dongling's hands. "If it was really second young master who killed someone, would those people do anything to us?" "Do not worry," Shen Dongling said, "others only want to deal with second older brother. What does it have to do with us?" She sat behind the screen and the pages of the book in her hands were not opened at all. Chapter 339. Young lady. Jingzhe bounced into the room and said, "The people outside are so fierce that even old Furen was alarmed." Shen Miao did not even lift her eyelids as she asked, "Oh? How is old Furen?" Hearing that second young master killed someone, she immediately fainted. Jingzhe was somewhat rejoicing in another's misfortune. "Young lady, this matter will not implicate us, right?" Guyu was deeply worried. After all, they all knew why Shen Yuan would kill someone and it was all because of Shen Miao adding fuel to the fire. "No matter, there will be someone to block it for us. Sun Tianzhang's position is high and the Shen residence is not inferior to them. Moreover, the final target is still Shen Yuan. Shen Yuan will use his life to pay with a life, thus they have nothing to say. But will second young master really use his life to pay with a life?" Guyu asked. Second master would not let second young master send his life away so easily. If there was no Shen Yuan Bo, second Shu would definitely do his best to offend second older brother. Shen Miao said, but with Shen Yuan Bo, second Shu would have a way out. Losing a son to appease the anger of the Sun family is worth it in second Shu's eyes. Among the three sons in the Shen residence, Shen Gui was the most indifferent towards kinship. Shen Wan at least doted on Shen Yu, but towards his own children, no matter if it was the D-born Shen Yuan, Shen Qing and Shen Yuan Bo or the Shu-born Shen Dongling, there was not a bit of genuine concern. To Shen Gui, children were either to help him in his career or to be his successor. No wonder the children of the second household did not have any feelings towards Shen Gui. If there was no Shen Yuan Bo, Shen Yuan was Shen Gui's only son and Shen Gui would definitely fight. But with Shen Yuan Bo, Shen Gui still had a son, so Shen Yuan was not necessary. Moreover, how could the Sun family be sent away so easily? In the past lifetime, the one who killed Sun Kainan was Shen Qiu and Sun Tianzhang's entire family locked Shen Qiu in prison and Shen Xian had to use all of his family's wealth to save Shen Qiu's life. Sun Tianxing only had one son and now that his only son died, how could he easily let off the enemy who killed his son? But only second young master was unlucky. Jingzhe's words shocked one to death. Biao young lady was let off just like that. She is still hiding in the residence and not coming out. After the incident, Jing Chu actually slipped back and hid with the Jing family in the Shen residence. How could that be? Shen Miao smiled. After all, she is the main culprit. Outside the mansion, Shen Wan dissuaded in a somewhat sorry state, "Everyone, listen to me. This matter has yet to be clarified, so please return first. We will definitely give everyone an explanation." A woman spat a mouthful of saliva on Shen Wan's face and said with her hands on her hips, "A debt must be paid, a life for a life. Our young master was killed by Shen Yuan, pay with your life. This isn't over." Shen Gui was somewhat cowering as he scolded Shen Yuan in his heart. At this moment, other than the servants of the minister's residence, there were also some by Axayan who were watching the commotion. Someone shouted, "Didn't they say that it was because of jealousy? What did the beauty that was being fought over look like? Why don't you let us feast our eyes? To fly into a rage for a beauty, how beautiful must that beauty be?" When those words were said, the surrounding people immediately echoed. The people of the minister's residence also reacted. Now the Sun family were in a mess. Sun Kai-nan, who was perfectly fine, had turned into an ice-cold corpse when he went out. At this moment they were grieving and wholeheartedly wanted Shen Yuan to pay with his life, thus they had forgotten about Jing Chu. At this moment when others reminded them, they remembered. Since Sun Kai-nan and Shen Yuan fought because of Jing Chu, then Shen Yuan accidentally killed Sun Kai-nan, then Jing Chu was the femme fatale. The Sun family's people immediately said, "Yes. Hand over that slut. It was she who seduced my young master. Shameless slut. Quickly hand her over." Chapter 340. Not to mention the Sun family, even Shen Gui himself could not wait to personally kill Jing Chu. Ever since Jing Chu came to the Shen residence, their second household of the Shen family had bad luck one after another. First was the matter of the family banquet which ruined Shen Yuan's reputation, and now Shen Yuan was involved in a murder case. Shen Gui did not say anything further as he instructed the servants, and in a short while, Jing Chu was tied up and sent out. Shen Gui gave a look to Shen Wan and Shen Wan said, "Everyone do not be angry. We will naturally be reasonable. Since this matter was caused by Chu, I will hand her over to you and let you handle her." Jing Chu cried out miserably, but how would the surrounding people allow her to resist? The Sun family pulled Jing Chu, who was tied up like a pig, over and gave her dozens of slaps on her face. Jing Chu fainted on the spot. "You all better not bully others too much." Jing Guanshen and the Jing couple also rushed out and raged when they saw this. But one saw the Sun family sneered, "No wonder you are people from Suzhou, that small place. It is fine that you are short-sighted, but you are so corrupt. You are already engaged but still go around seducing other men. This matter is not over, so you all better not think about it." The Jing family was angry and afraid. They were angry that the Sun family was so arrogant and afraid that other than the Shen residents, they did not have any backing in the Ding capital. And previously the Shen residence was already in a mess with them. Now seeing that they were out of luck, it was good that the Shen family did not throw stones at them when they were down. How could they just stand by and watch? After making a ruckus in front of the Shen family's doors for a while and seeing that the sky had darkened, the people from the Sun family then grabbed Jing Chu, who was already floating in the air, and left. Before leaving, the leading matron sneered, "Today is just the beginning. Your Shen family, just wait." Master had already written a memorial to the emperor. There is no such thing as taking someone's life and still being free and unfettered. A life for a life, no one can think about it well. Shen Gui saw the Sun family leaving behind a mess and swaggered away and almost could not breathe. The last sentence that Sun Tianjing had already written a memorial to the emperor made him even more shocked. Sun Tianjing only had one son, and once Sun Kainan died, Sun Tianjing would not let him have an easy time even if it was a life and death struggle. It seemed that even if Shen Yuan died, it would not be able to quell the anger of the Sun family. Shen Qiu returned to the western courtyard and wiped his sweat before complaining to Shen Miao, "The Sun family is too rude," and almost smashed the main doors. "My soldiers couldn't stop them." The pain of losing a son. Shen Miao comforted him, "Naturally one has to vent. Father and mother do not intend to intervene this time." Shen Qiu muttered to himself, but Shen Yuan is never impulsive. Even if Jing Chu Chu secretly met Sun Kainan, why would she kill in a fit of anger? Who knows? Shen Miao casually said, "Perhaps Sun Kainan is fated to die, and it is the same no matter who he dies in." In the main hall of the Sun family, a room full of concubines were kneeling on the ground. In the middle of the hall, there was a corpse covered in white cloth. Even so, the white cloth was still stained with dried blood. Ever since Sun Furen knew of Sun Kainan's death, she fainted, and when she woke up, she almost collapsed and did not listen to anyone. Sun Tianjing was already in his prime, and at this moment his eyes were bloodshot and his cheeks were trembling slightly. There was a wandering Taoist priest who calculated that he would not have any children in his lifetime. In his early years, Sun Tianjing had married countless concubines and indeed could not have any sons. Sun Kainan was conceived by Sun Furen with great difficulty, and to Sun Tianjing, it was a child in his old age. Thus he was pampered from young, and in the long run, Sun Kainan's lustful and playful character was fostered. It was just that Sun Tianjing had a high position of power and was afraid of provoking the imperial censor's mouth. Thus he had long reminded Sun Kainan not to be ostentatious, and if he wanted to play with females, he must bring them back to the residence as concubines. Sun Kainan did not enter the official ranks and spent most of his time in the residence, so there were not many people who knew him. As for those officials in the court, it was even more impossible to have any friendship with him. Chapter 341. Who knew that he would die in Shen Yuan's hands? This time it was really like what the Taoist priest said, Sun Tianjing was destined to be childless. Shen Yuan. Sun Tianjing gritted his teeth, "I want him to pay with his life." Master. One of Sun Tianjing's beloved concubines wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes. One heard that the servants had brought that female back. In the end it was that female that caused our young master to be like this. Master plans to, Sun Tianjing sneered, "Do not play to death first. Leave a breath for Furen." The beloved concubines shuddered. These concubines had experienced Sun Furen's methods, and now that Sun Furen was carrying the pain of losing her son, she would not be able to do anything to that Jing Chu Chu. The Shen family can only move against Shen Yuan, and the Jing family wants to retreat unscathed. With a ka-cha sound, Sun Tianjing actually crushed the cup in his hands. The cup scratched his hand and fresh blood dripped down, but he was still indecisive as he said hatefully, "I want everyone in the Jing family to be buried with Yuan. Regarding the matter of Shen Yuan killing the only son of the Minister of Personnel, the entire capital was discussing about it. In the residence of Prince Ding, Dong Hao stood in the hall and bowed his head towards the person on the high seat. Fu Xiuyi's hand caressed the rim of the teacup and said in deep thought, "The memorial that was supposed to be presented to Imperial Father tomorrow was to happen to Shen Yuan today. The evidence in Shen Yuan's hands is not complete. Your Highness, do you need to use any methods to get the words out?" "No need." Fu Xiuyi waved his hands, "The things that Shen Yuan gave is already enough. Even if I wish for it to be complete, I cannot take action on this matter." "Your Highness's meaning is to let Shen Yuan go?" Dong Hao asked. "It is fine if it was others, but it had to be Sun Tianjing. Sun Tianjing is Prince Shou's person. Prince Shou would definitely intervene in this matter, and if I were to take action, it would only make Prince Zhou alert. Shen Yuan's trouble this time is too big. Fu Xiaoyi shook his head. Dong Hao was silent for a moment, but what if Shen Yuan were to fight to the death and betray your highness? Shen Yuan is used to hiding a card for himself, so naturally one must guard against what you said. Fu Xiaoyi looked at the teacup in his hands, so not only one cannot help Shen Yuan in this matter, one must also urge the Ministry of Justice to quickly execute. Killing Shen Yuan in prison would inevitably arouse suspicions. Think of a way to feed him. Dong Hao quickly agreed. He then asked Fu Xiaoyi, will your highness submit the memorial tomorrow? Nope. Fu Xiaoyi rubbed his forehead. This matter will cause a commotion. It is not loud enough to talk about the memorial right now. Let's wait for a while. He suddenly opened his eyes. However, you'd better find out who Shen Yuan has a grudge with recently. Dong Hao was startled. Your highness, do you mean that someone is behind this? Shen Yuan is never impulsive, but this time, he killed Sun Tianjing's only son. Don't you think it's too coincidental? Moreover, it is very strange. Why would Jing Chu meet Shen Yuan when she is having an affair? Shen Yuan is not someone who will be schemed against. Dong Hao said, and if he can even control this in the future, this person must be very familiar with Shen Yuan. To be able to force Shen Yuan to such a situation. Fu Xiaoyi said, this child cannot be left alive. I nurture a chess piece and not to be used by others to become useless. Speaking till here, Fu Xiaoyi's eyes flashed with a trace of gloominess. He did not look as light as he looked. Shen Yuan, this chess piece, was carefully nurtured by him for many years. It was not only because Shen Yuan was resourceful, but more importantly, Shen Yuan was from the Shen family. In Shen Yuan's position, many things would be easier to do in the future. But now he had no choice but to abandon the rook to protect the general. The confidant that he carefully nurtured would no longer be of use in the future. Chapter 342. Not to mention it was done in such a crude way by a female. This subordinate will definitely investigate seriously. Dong Hao said, fortunately before the incident, Shen Yuan had already passed the thing to your highness. Fu Xiaoyi said, unfortunately one still have to wait. At the other end, in the upper floor of the Feng Xian pawn shop, Ji Yushu clapped his hands together and was grinning from ear to ear, wonderful. Shen young lady really does not take action, but once she takes action, it is amazing. Originally tomorrow it should be Shen Xan who is out of luck, but at the end Shen Yuan is in prison today. This day really came at the right time. It is only a coincidence. Gao Yang rolled his eyes at him, most likely Shen Miao still does not know about the matter. No matter if she knows or not, I have won the bet with you. Ji Yushu was proud of himself. Send the banknotes to the pawn shop yourself and hand it over to Hongling. Gao Yang was silent for a moment before saying, perhaps Shen Yuan had never thought that there would be a day where he would fall into such despicable means. Because his own wife was having an affair and was jealous of others, he mistakenly killed the adulterer. No matter how one listened to these words, it was not very glorious. No matter if it was the adulterer or the woman who did not follow the womanly ways or the husband's family who was cuckolded, when people talk about this matter, they would only treat it as a joke. Shen Yuan originally had talent and knew how to endure, and had just returned to the capital. With Fu Xiaoyi's attention on him, he would become a talent that no one could underestimate in time. Who knew that it would end in such an embarrassing and tragic manner? Even though it looked like a joke, the outcome was very grim. Just because the person he killed was Sun Tianjing's only son. Sun Tianjing will send up the memorial tomorrow. Gao Yang, do you think that Shen Yuan will pay with his life this time? Ji Yushu asked. What do you think of Shen Miao? Gao Yang asked an irrelevant question. What does this have to do with Shen young lady? Ji Yushu was puzzled. Shen Miao is a person who set traps. Once one stepped into it, have you seen anyone who could retreat safely? From Prince Yu's incident, you should be able to see that her traps were never just one move. This matter looked like to deal with Shen Yuan, but in fact it was not so. You say that she still has a move? Ji Yushu asked. At most Shen Yuan will pay with his life. What else does she want? I feel that Shen Yuan is only one of them. Gao Yang shook his head. His expression couldn't help but turn grim. If she did it, I have a feeling that it wouldn't be just one person. Ji Yushu was silent for a moment before asking seriously, what kind of deep enmity does Shen young lady have with the rest of the Shen family? Even though it is creepy, one think that there is a reason for it. Could it be that the Shen family had done something unforgivable to her? For a little girl to use such cruel means to plan step by step, there must be some other hidden story. It was just that even Bai Shaoxing could not find out that it was because of the Shen family's method of raising her to be an idiot. It seemed to be somewhat unreasonable. Gao Yang shook his head. I don't know either, but she's too flamboyant. This time Shen Yuan was sent to prison because Shen Yuan was Prince Ding's man. Since Prince Ding was at a disadvantage, he would definitely notice her. The person that was previously sent also said that Prince Ding's men are currently investigating the matter. It is not good for Shen young lady to go against Prince Ding. Ji Yushu was deeply worried. Prince Ding's thoughts are deep and his methods are treacherous. Once it is discovered that it was done by Shen young lady, one do not know what he would do in the future. No need to worry. Gao Yang said, I feel that Shen Miao is very familiar with Prince Ding. Perhaps everything that she did, she might have considered the consequences if Prince Ding knew about it. Rather than worry about her, it is better to worry about yourself. Gao Yang looked at Ji Yushu. Have you found the person that Third Xia wanted you to look for? Ko. Ji Yushu touched his nose. I will immediately send someone over. Did not think that the Shen family's internal affairs were so chaotic. To have such a big play at the beginning of spring this year, what would happen in the future? Ayaya. Both are nobles but fell in love with a commoner young female. Because of jealousy, one died and one was injured. Isn't this a play that only appears in dramas? If one were to say, that commoner young female looks are really ordinary. One do not know why would the two nobles be so blind to be jealous of her. It would be better to let the two nobles be together. Huolong, did you recently read some strange books again? The black-clad female brushed her long hair and said in a charming manner, could it be that what I said is wrong? For men to fight over, one must at least be as beautiful as me. You're in high spirits. A sudden voice sounded and the group of black-clad men that were squatting on the ground and playing suddenly became silent. One by one, they stood up as if they were facing a great enemy and looked at the person in front of them. The purple-clad youth had handsome brows but looked colder and more arrogant in the night. He swept a glance at everyone. Why do you not continue speaking? Everyone lowered their heads and did not speak. Xie Jingxing turned and left and only stopped after he left that group of people far behind. Did he laugh at himself? This little girl has some means. He lowered his eyes and looked at the starless night sky before saying softly, I do not have time anymore. Chapter 343. Regarding the case of Shen Yuan accidentally killing Sun Kai-nan in the Ding capital, the trial of the case was unprecedentedly swift and decisive. First of all, Sun Tianjing sent a memorial to the imperial court to request Shen Yuan to repay the debt of blood with blood. If he did not comply, he would have to return to his hometown due to his old age, so he actually threatened Emperor Wen Hui to quit. Compared to Shen Gui, the Minister of Appointments was clearly more important. Sun Tianjing had been in office for many years, and the connections he had made were to suddenly change to someone else. It was likely that there would be great chaos. Emperor Wenhui naturally wanted to appease Sun Tianjing. Secondly, the imperial censors would never point fingers at the courtiers for making mistakes. How could they let this case of manslaughter go? Thinking that Sun Tianjing had lost his only son, the censor's censure fell on Shengui. What was unexpected was Shengui's attitude. Shengui knelt in front of Emperor Wenhui and promised with tears and snot that he did not teach his son properly and was willing to place righteousness before family and let Shen Yuan pay with his life. It was said that his words shocked all the civil and military officials in the court. Although these words sounded impartial, he did not try to fight for his own son first, but instead straightforwardly agreed to pay with his life. This was too inhumane. Even though Shengui was usually smooth and slick, even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs. This action still made his colleagues who were on good terms with him stay at a respectful distance. The ministers all stood on Sun Tianjing's side, and when Emperor Wenhui asked the princes for their opinion, the 9 princes unanimously stood on Sun Tianjing's side. Even if they didn't express their stance, almost everyone knew how the case would go. Shen Yuan's execution order was given 3 days later. This was probably the fastest execution order since the founding of Ming Qi. There was almost no action to reverse the verdict or resist, and directly convicted. There was no doubt that the Sun family added fuel to the fire, but the Shen family's inaction was also a big reason. As for whether there were other people secretly pulling the strings, it was unknown. In the dark prison, Shen Yuan sat in the innermost part. His hair was already disheveled, and his body had not been washed for several days, so there was a sour smell coming from it. If one were to look closely at his usually calm gaze, one would be able to see slight panic and even a hint of despair hidden within. Last night, someone had snuck in and fed him a mute drug. He could not say anything. Who would do such a thing? Who would have such remarkable abilities to break into the prison? Shen Yuan knew it clearly. Fu Xiaoyi would not come to save him. At first, he still held a bit of hope, but after thinking about it carefully, he knew that Fu Xiaoyi saving him would do more harm than good. That man was best at seeking benefits and avoiding harm, so he would not take this risk for him. On the contrary, Shen Yuan's existence had become a restless chess piece for Fu Xiaoyi. Naturally, Fu Xiaoyi had to eradicate him mercilessly. Feeding him a mute drug did not necessarily mean that he did not want to kill him, but Fu Xiaoyi was cautious and most likely he was afraid that if he died in the prison, it would raise suspicions. A bitter smile slowly floated on Shen Yuan's lips. The winner was king and the loser was in the wrong. He knew from the beginning what kind of person Fu Xiaoyi was. Working under Fu Xiaoyi, one should have thought that there might be such a result, but one did not expect that this result would come so quickly. There seemed to be footsteps in the darkness. Unlike the slightly hurried footsteps of the prison guards, the footsteps were somewhat slow. He raised his head and looked towards the direction of the footsteps, and saw that under the dim light, a purple dress was right in front of him. Looking up, the young female had a delicate and pretty face as she looked at him with a smile, second older brother. Shen Yuan's heart was blocked up. The moment he saw Shen Miao's face, a strong hatred and unwillingness gushed out from his heart, making Shen Yuan wish that he could kill Shen Miao now. Even if he did not understand how the matter became like this, there was one thing that Shen Yuan was very clear about. This matter was definitely related to Shen Miao. Chapter 344. Shen Miao slowly squatted down and was at eye level with Shen Yuan as she smiled. Second older brother must not be living well in there these days. Second Shen is crazy and second Shu is not willing to see you. Seventh younger brother is still young. Speaking of which, old Furen dotes on you the most, but yesterday old Furen gave an order that no one is allowed to mention your name in the residence. It seemed that she had given up on you. After thinking about it in my heart, you and I are siblings, so I came to send you on your last journey. Shen Yuan gritted his teeth as he looked at Shen Miao. Words could kill and destroy a person's faith. And what Shen Miao did now was to stab a knife into his heart without hesitation. Even though Shen Yuan's feelings were cold, but when he was in prison and there was no one who came to visit, it made one's heart feel cold. Even though old Furen treated him well in the past, it was because of his innate talent and intelligence. Now that he was a prisoner, old Shen Furen would definitely draw a clear line to avoid trouble. Thinking about it this way, second older brother and eldest sister are indeed biological siblings and both had been in prison before. But when eldest sister was in prison, second Shen was still running around, but now there is no one running around for you. Shen Yuan did not speak. Why is second older brother not speaking? Shen Miao tilted her head and looked at him. Is it that you are not willing to talk to me or? She suddenly smiled, fed mute medicine. Shen Yuan was surprised for a moment as Shen Miao could actually guess that he was fed mute medicine. Before he could think it through, Shen Miao's following words made him shocked. It seems that Fu Xiuyi's methods are still the same as before and there is no difference. Shen Miao muttered. Shen Yuan's eyes widened as he heard Fu Xiuyi's name from Shen Miao's mouth. How did Shen Miao know that he was working for Fu Xiuyi? Moreover, Shen Miao used such a familiar tone, and from her words, it seemed that she understood Fu Xiuyi very well. The amazement in Shen Yuan's heart could not be expressed in words. In the inner courtyard of the Shen residence, no matter how brilliant Shen Miao's methods were, Shen Yuan did not think too highly of her because the unmarried young lady scene stopped there. But when Shen Miao brought out Fu Xiuyi's name, Shen Yuan could no longer look at it with a normal heart. Second older brother need not be so surprised. Shen Miao swept a glance at him and said, not only do I know Fu Xiuyi, I also know his plans. If you want to tell Fu Xiuyi about my matter and atone for your crimes, it is too late. His Highness Prince Ding was cautious by nature, and since he had fed you mute medicine, he would not save you. In order to not attract attention, he would not send anyone over here. Even after you die, I won't have any contact with you. From the moment you became a cripple, he had nothing to do with you, and he won't let you have any means to get involved with him. Shen Yuan's heart started to beat wildly. What Shen Miao said was not wrong. Fu Xiuyi was that kind of person. Therefore, after yesterday, he had been waiting for his own death in despair. One must not think of a life and death struggle because that kind of ending would be worse than death. Fu Xiuyi was never the gentleman that he was on the surface. He dipped his finger into the muddy water in the bowl and wrote a few words on the dusty ground. What is your purpose? Shen Miao burst out laughing. When she laughed, her eyes were curved and the corners of her mouth curved. It was as if she had returned to a year ago when she was still an idiot. She was a little stupid and a little scheming, but she was indeed a young lady who did not understand anything. Now it was obviously the same demeanor, but it made one's heart feel cold. Shen Miao finally stopped laughing and looked at Shen Yuan. Didn't second older brother guess what my purpose is? You want to deal with the second household? Shen Yuan wrote on the ground. Not only the second household. Shen Miao suddenly whispered. Her eyes suddenly burst out a bit of fierceness. She was unable to restrain the fierceness, and even killing intent overflowed. She said, there is still the third household, old Furen and Prince Ding. Chapter 345. Shen Yuan stared at her closely. You want to ask again why? Shen Miao said, I am only doing the things that you have done before for you to see. Just like this time, does second older brother not feel familiar with the matter of the Jing family? That's because that's your method to begin with. How can you resolve it when I'm using your own method to deal with you? Shen Yuan looked at Shen Miao in confusion. He did not understand Shen Miao's words and only felt that Shen Miao's expression at the moment was like she had fallen into madness. Forget about the hatred towards the second and third household, since everyone knew that they were only pretending to be harmonious on the surface. But where did the hatred towards Prince Ding come from? Was it because she was in love with Prince Ding but was unable to get a response? Second older brother. Shen Miao smiled strangely. You should thank this younger sister. On your road to the Yellow Springs, there are so many people who will accompany you in death. Do not worry, after you, there will not be anyone else in the second household of the Shen family to take over your position. You will definitely still be the only eldest son of the Shen family. Shen Yuan glared at Shen Miao. Shen Miao stood up and her voice was gently raised in the darkness before falling heavily into Shen Yuan's ears. The second household will be without descendants. When they were out, the jailer naturally left in satisfaction after obtaining the benefits and even promised not to tell outsiders about the matter. Jingzhe and Guyu helped Shen Miao up the horse carriage and Guyu asked, "Young lady, is it really necessary to execute second young master 3 days later?" Shen Miao nodded her head. "It is really like a dream." Guyu muttered, "A few days ago second young master was still high and mighty but now his life is about to be delivered. Fate should be like this." Shen Miao said coldly. Sensing that Shen Miao's current mood was most likely not very good, Jingzhe and Guyu stuck out their tongues and no longer spoke. Upon returning to the Shen residence, upon entering the room, one saw a number of people surrounding the main hall. Upon a closer look, it was the Jing family. Jing Furen was rolling on the floor making a scene. "You all return my choo-choo. You all return my choo-choo." Old Shen Furen was so angry that her face turned green and called out to the servants at the side, "Still not throwing these people out for me." Old Furen, Jing Guanxing, changed his previous refined appearance and said fiercely, "Our choo-choo entered your residence perfectly but was taken away by others. Now it is unknown whether she is dead or alive. Even if this matter is brought to the officials, you are in the wrong." Old Shen Furen scolded angrily, "You still have the face to say. What did that little bitch do to our family? If it wasn't for this jinx, how would the Shen family be involved in the lawsuit?" Old Furen must speak cautiously. Jing Guanxing said, "At that time we all said that there must be someone secretly playing tricks. My sister's personal maidservant also disappeared. Don't you think it strange? Someone must have bribed her." The womenfolk in the hall were all present. Chen Roqiu looked at the front with some headaches, Shen Yu looked at the Jing family with disgust and Luo Shuaiyan had an indifferent attitude. Wan Yinyang held Shen Dongling's hand and stood quietly at the side, as there was no place for her to interrupt. Biao older brother is pulling the topic too far. Do you think that by placing all the sins on a personal maidservant, everything would be over? Shen Miao's voice sounded, "After all, this is a matter of having an illicit relationship with others and one cannot be forced by a maidservant." The words of ridicule made Jing Guanxing's face turn red and white. Everyone looked towards the door as Shen Miao walked in. Old Shen Furen had never liked Shen Miao as much as today. As long as she could make these unreasonable pestering people of the Jing family stop for a moment, her heart would be warm. Luo Shuaiyan happily pulled Shen Miao to her side. "Jiao Jiao has been out for so long, are you tired?" Chapter 346. Jing Furen was still crying. "You and father are blood relatives and Chu Chu also has your blood flowing in her. How can you be so cruel? Heavens! Old Furen, you are forcing us to death." Old Shen Furen was extremely annoyed. "Who is blood relative to you? A group of broken families from the capital also want to have a relationship with me. Why not take a piss and see who you are? Really think that with some good looks one can do whatever one wants. Indeed worthy to be from a small family. A body full of coquettishness and know how to seduce men at such a young age. Old Shinfuren was anxious and actually used the scolding words that she used in the marketplace. It could be said to be extremely unpleasant to hear, and for a moment, everyone who heard it was stunned. After a long while, Jing Guanxing suddenly laughed. Old Furen, are you really that heartless? You really want to stand by and watch Chu Chu's matter? What does Jing Chu Chu have to do with me? Ridiculous. Old Shinfuren answered without hesitation. Good. Jing Guanxing sneered and suddenly swept a glance at Shin Miao. Since you want to destroy the bridge after crossing the river, then do not blame me for not being loyal. In the beginning you let Chu Chu climb onto Shin Chio's bed and wanted me to think of ways to gain Shin Miao's favor. At that time you were not this heartless. When those words were said, everyone was shocked. Even though they had already guessed the inside story, they had never thought that Jing Guanxing would say such words in front of everyone. The one who was the most shocked was of course Luo Shuiyan. She looked at Jing Guanxing and slowly asked, "What did you say?" Jing Guanxing did not care about old Shinfuren's furious expression and said like a broken jar, "Biaoshen most likely do not know. In the beginning when Chu Chu and I just came to the Shin residence, old Furen treated us warmly." Why? She said that she loved us siblings very much and hoped to be in-laws with the Jing family. But, how would eldest Biao older brother like Chu Chu who came from a small family? At that time old Furen had personally drugged her and one think that she was in a hurry to facilitate the marriage but did not think that at the end it was second Biao older brother who had the advantage. Luo Shuiyan was so angry that her entire body was trembling. She suddenly pulled out the flexible sword from her waist and placed it across Jing Guanxing's neck. Jing Guanxing's expression changed but he still forced a smile and said, "Biaoshen has mistaken the wrong person this time. Both of us siblings know our own capabilities and without old Furen's supervision, how would we dare to think about it? Besides, it was old madam who drugged him. Shouldn't Auntie blame someone else?" Luo Shuiyan turned her head to stare at old Shinfuren and her murderous aura sword. Old Shinfuren was so scared that she almost fell down from her seat. She said, "Eldest, are you going to kill your mother? The old lady not only wants to marry my cousin, but also wants me to please my cousin." Jing Guanxing laughed frivolously. He also said that male and female love is just like that. When the rice is cooked, the person will be dead set. Luo Shuiyan couldn't take it anymore. She slashed the ground with her sword. The ground was originally made of good quality stone, but now that she slashed it, a clear crack appeared. Jing Furen screamed in fright and old Shin Furen's face turned pale. Shin Yu and Chen Rochio were somewhat cowering but Wan Yinyang's heart was astonished. She did not think that old Shin Furen would even use such a cheap method. It was not strange for ordinary matrons or Yinyang to use such methods, but old Shin Furen was the head of the family and such methods were simply unsightly. Luo Shuiyan pulled Shin Miao with one hand and held her sword with the other as she looked at old Shin Furen. When she was really angry, her murderous aura would surge out, making one believe without hesitation that she would be able to cut off old Shin Furen's head in the next moment. She said, "Old Furen, ever since marrying into the Shin residence, both Shin Axeon and I have treated you with deep affection. Even though you are not his birth mother, both of us husband and wife still respect you. But now I know that there are really white-eyed wolves in this world. I cannot afford to stay in such a Shin family." Chapter 347. Eldest, do not listen to his nonsense. Old Shinfuren's evil intentions had not died. Do you want to be unfilial? Whether it is nonsense or not, one will know upon investigation. As for unfilial, Luo Shuiyan sneered and said word by word, "Even if this old mother has to carry the reputation of unfilial for the rest of her life, I will not let my children follow beside this kind of family." She pulled Shin Miao, "Go." No matter how furious old Shin Furen was at the back, how the Jing family pestered endlessly and how Chen Rochio smoothed things out, all these things were not important anymore. Shen Miao was pulled by Luo Shuiyan towards the western courtyard, but her heart was very carefree. This was the goal that she wanted to achieve. Sometimes when one side of the story was said, it would make others feel that the strength was not enough. It was not because one was not willing to believe, but it was not an easy matter to separate from the family. This involved many entanglements of interests and one might bear a lot of infamy. It was not an easy matter to make Shen Xian determined to separate from the family. But after today, the matter of separating from the family would be much easier. At least from now on, Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan would not have a trace of pity towards old Shen Furen. As parents, when faced with someone harming their children, it was an instinctive protection. Luo Shuiyan pulled Shen Miao back to the room and first closed the door before taking a breath and sneering, "Your father and older brother went to the palace today. One should let them see with their own eyes what kind of goods these people are." Finishing, she suddenly thought of something and looked at Shen Miao apologetically. "Jiao Jiao, you must be frightened. Mother was just too angry." Shen Miao shook her head and looked at her. "What do we do next?" "Mother said those words to old Furen today. One fear that old Furen would use this matter to blame mother. What is there to be afraid of?" Luo Shuiyan slapped the table. "Wait for your father to return and we will discuss about the separation of the family. Everyone in the Shen residence do not have good intentions, and if this goes on, who knows what will happen." She touched Shen Miao's face and said, "No wonder you want us to stay in the capital for half a year more. Did you know about it long ago?" Shen Miao smiled and did not speak. Luo Shuiyan increasingly felt that the guess in her heart was correct. She got up and said, "No, I still have to investigate this matter. I will let the guards outside guard the courtyard door. Don't go out." He actually treated the Shenfu as a dragon's pool and tiger's den. Shen Miao nodded her head, and after Luo Shuiyan left, Jingzhe asked, "Young lady, can one really separate from the family?" "Of course." Shen Miao lightly said, "My mother is one who cannot tolerate sand in her eyes, so naturally there is a need to separate." "That's great." Jingzhe said, "After separating from the family, young lady will have more freedom to do whatever she wants and need not guard against this and that all day long." Bai Lu walked in and said to Shen Miao, Young lady Tao Yuan has been sent out and settled in the manor with money." Shen Miao nodded. It was very easy to bribe Tao Yuan, who was by Jing Chu-Chu's side. Jing Chu-Chu originally planned to marry Shen Yuan and then make Tao Yuan a Yinyang to win over Shen Yuan's heart. What was non-committal was that Shen Yuan was extremely disgusted with the matter of him being schemed against, and if Tao Yuan was really promoted as a Yinyang, Shen Yuan would not treat her well. But Jing Chu-Chu still thought that she had done a great favor to Tao Yuan and did not know that Tao Yuan had already been bribed by others. She did not want to be a concubine and also did not want to follow a master like Jing Chu-Chu. Tao Yuan risked her life and finally obtained her freedom. Shen Miao also did not disappoint her promise to Tao Yuan and gave her money to protect her life. A superior must know how to use both kindness and power to their subordinates. From today onwards, everything would be done according to what she wanted to do. Guyu said, "After second young master is beheaded, the residents will most likely calm down. At this time, it is the right time to separate from the family." Shen Miao smiled gently. How would it calm down? Not to mention that the Jing family was left for son Tianjing to deal with, but the second household's people were not completely dead yet. Second Shen must be very sad to know that second older brother was beheaded. Shen Miao said softly. "Is not second foreign crazy?" Guyu was surprised when she heard that. If one is crazy, one would not have a mind. Listening to the people in Kai Yun Yuan, second foreign cannot even recognize people now, so how would she know about the matter? Crazy? Shen Miao shook her head, that might not necessarily be the case. When a person was in pain and despair, they would use crazy to escape the reality that they could not face. Ren Wanyun's most painful thing was that night in Wulong Temple. Her inaction made Shinqing walk step by step to the final ending. She was powerless to change anything and could only watch helplessly as Shinqing died. She was unable to face Shinqing's death and was also unable to face herself, so she finally went crazy. Now that Shin Yuan's death was spread back, one think that she would go crazy even more because she was still unable to help with Shin Yuan's matter. In fact, Ren Wanyun's time of madness was not long. Whether she would choose to continue being crazy or not, it would depend on whether she could gradually accept the facts. One think that Ren Wanyun would wake up soon because she still had Shin Yuan Bo, and she was afraid that Shin Yuan Bo would fall into Wan Yinyang's hands. Shin Miao wanted Ren Wanyun to wake up in advance. What she wanted to deal with was never an individual but the entire family's lifeline. Since she chose the second household, how could she stop moving forward after losing a pair of children from the second household? What she wanted was for Shin Gui's third generation to end. Chapter 348. 3 days later, the case of Shin Yuan accidentally killing Sun Kai Nan ended. Sun Tianjing had the heart to take revenge for his only son's tragic death, and Shin Yuan was executed at the Meridian Gate. Countless commoners spread the news, and all of them wanted to see how this young genius who originally had a bright future would end up like this. Some people felt sympathy for Shin Yuan and some people scolded Jing Chu Chu for being a femme fatale. The noise was actually very lively. Shin Yuan probably never thought that he would have such a day. He was proud and arrogant, wholeheartedly wanting to climb up, wanting everyone to see his achievements. But now, he was being pointed at by the lowly commoners, in his eyes. He probably felt extremely uncomfortable in his heart. Even more people threw vegetable leaves and rotten eggs at Shin Yuan's body. The foul-smelling things covered Shin Yuan's body. Without thinking, it must be the Sun family's people. Shin Yuan knelt on the execution platform and beside him was the executioner. Originally at this time, if the death row prisoner had a family member, they would be able to send the death row prisoner on his last journey, feed him food and drink wine on his way, but today no one from the Shin family came. Needless to say, Shin Xayan was already like fire and water with the rest of the Shin family, so why would he come over? Shin Gui had always sought advantages and avoided disadvantages, and Ren Wanyun was even crazier. Old Shin Furen's legs were inconvenient, but even if her legs were nimble, one feared that she would not come. The only strange thing was that the usually gentle and righteous third branch did not show up today. It seemed that he had to choose between being tactful and offending the Sun family for a long time before he made this decision. In the eyes of others, they could only sigh when they saw how the Shin family was behaving. Shin Yuan raised his head and the scorching sun shone down on the Ding capital. It was obviously the new year, and the cold of the winter sun made the golden sunlight as dazzling as the summer. It was already noon. The executioner spat out a mouthful of wine, raised the ghost head broadsword, and chopped down. The saber fell. The crowd burst into cries of alarm. The women were so scared that they covered their eyes. The head rolled down the stage and into the crowd. After a while, blood spilled out. On the ground, Shin Yuan's eyes were wide open. He seemed to be a little confused, as if the head that had been separated from his body would say something in the next moment. Someone saw this and quietly turned around, disappearing into the crowd. At this moment, there was dead silence in the Shin residence. It was not that it did not happen if one did not mention it, but Shin Yuan's death had greatly damaged the Shin residence's vitality. Speaking of which, the Shin residence's heirs were not considered to be prosperous, and Shin Yuan was one of the best of the best. Such a rare person who might be able to support the Shin residence in the future died under the executioner's ghost head broadsword. At least the people of the Shin residence were not sad. Shenhuan was sitting in the room when a manservant ran in and said, "The execution has been carried out. The people at the execution ground have already sent second young master back." When the Sun family finally agreed to return Shen Yuan's corpse to the Shen family, it was already a huge concession. Even though they did not openly fight with Sun Tianzhang and the matter of Shen Yuan was handled according to Sun Tianzhang's wishes, everyone knew that in the future, the Shen family and Sun family would have enmity. It all depended on how big the enmity was. "After I bring him back, there's no need to stop the coffin. I'll bury him in a few days at the earliest." Shenhuan sighed, his thoughts heavy. "Master, are you still worried about this?" Chen Roqiu walked over and said gently, "Your Honor, we are also powerless in this matter. After all, the Sun family is not an ordinary family. I just feel that." Shenhuan shook his head, "Everything is not right. Did you not discover it?" Shenhuan said, "Recently the Shen family seems to have some bad luck, one after another mishaps. Could it be that there is something unclean?" Chen Roqiu's heart was shocked. Shenhuan was startled. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Chapter 349. Chen Roqiu quickly said, "I am just speaking nonsense. Master must not be offended." She was somewhat vexed in her heart. Shenhuan hated these strange matters the most, and with her unintentional words just now, she feared that Shenhuan would be unhappy. She opened her mouth to echo Shenhuan's words, "Speaking of it, but it seems that it is second older brother's family who have mishaps. First it was Qing'er, then second sister-in-law, and now it is Your Honor." The more Chen Roqiu spoke, the more uneasy she felt. Even though she previously looked down on and was jealous of Ren Wanyun, but after Ren Wanyun went crazy, there seemed to be no one in the residence who could stand on the same line as her. Luo Shuiyan. Shen Xian and Shenhuan did not crawl out from the same mother's womb, so how could it be sincere? "It is exactly so," Shenhuan said. "One do not know whose second older brother had enmity with. Now that one look at it, it seems that it was planned beforehand. It is inevitable that second older brother will offend some people in the officialdom tomorrow." Chen Roqiu said, "But why did it have to happen this year? Thinking about it, it seems that ever since Fifth Lady woke up from falling into the water, things have been happening one after another. You would not say that it was done by Little Five?" Shenhuan found it funny. If Little Five had that kind of ability, one feared that the world would be in chaos. He patted Chen Roqiu's hands comfortingly. "I know that these days you have been working hard. Do not let your imagination run wild. How would Little Five, a young lady, have such ability? It is said that eldest brother and eldest sister-in-law taught her, but eldest brother and eldest sister-in-law would not use such a blunt knife to grind meat. They have always been straightforward." Shenhuan said, "I will pay attention to this matter. You do not need to think too much and pay attention to Yuer's marriage. Seeing that she is at the age to talk about marriage." Once Shen Yu's marriage was mentioned, Chen Roqiu suppressed her suspicions about Shen Miao. Shenhuan valued heirs more than Shen Gui and had never despised Shen Yu for being a daughter for so many years and truly loved Shen Yu. Chen Roqiu smiled, "I will listen to master." In the western courtyard, Shen Miao was putting on her clothes as Jingzhe helped her tidy up her hair. Second young master's coffin has been brought back and one heard that it will be buried soon. Even the funeral will not be grand. In the Shen family, other than the first household, there were some who loved to put up a front. Just like how old Shen Furen's birthday celebration was known by the entire city, Shen Yuan, as the eldest son of the second household, did not even do the funeral after his death. It was indeed somewhat cold. Part of this was to cover up the scandal, but more importantly, there were not many people in the court who were willing to offend Sun Tianjing for Shen Gui. Even if there was a funeral, there would not be many people who would come to offer their condolences. Instead, it would be a joke. Second master has not been in the manor these past few days. Guyu also said, even if they return, they will rest in Wan Yinyang's courtyard. What kind of time is it now? In any case, they are one's own flesh and blood, to be so heartless. Shen Miao smiled. During the day he is busy winning over the estranged ministers, and as for the night, if he does not rest in Wan Yinyang's room, could it be that he is sharing the same bed and pillow with second Shen? She originally wanted to take the opportunity to reprimand Shen Gui's heartlessness, but when Shen Miao said the words sharing the same bed and pillow, Guyu was somewhat embarrassed. She did not know why Shen Miao was so bold now. It was obvious that there was nothing wrong with her etiquette, but why did she not know how to be shy in matters between men and women? It was also good to put on an act, otherwise in the future when males see her, they would only be surprised by Shen Miao's valiance and who would dare to approach her. Shen Miao did not pay attention to Guyu's expression, thus she did not know that Guyu had so many thoughts in her heart. She only said, "How is the news that was sent to the Sun family side to inquire?" The Sun family hid it too tightly and the servants know very little. Jing Zhi quickly said, "One only know that Biao young lady's days are not good." Heard that on the first day. She could not continue. Chapter 350. What about the first day? Shen Miao turned her head and looked at Jing Zhi. Jing Zhi stammered, "One heard that on the first day, Biao young lady and the horses in the stables were fed with medicine and let them. At that time, old master's son even let all the servants watch from outside the stable." Guyu almost choked on her own saliva, man and horse. Jing Zhi's face turned red in an instant. Guyu was still asking, that Sun family's people are all abnormal. Jing Chu was in so much pain when a human and horse intercourse. This was not only physical pain. When so many servants saw her unbearable scene, one feared that her heart would rather die than live. Seeing that Guyu was still relentlessly questioning, Jing Zhi was somewhat annoyed. He originally thought that these filthy things should not be said in front of Shen Miao as to avoid dirtying Shen Miao's ears. He did not think that when he turned his head over, he saw that Shen Miao's expression was calm. Not to mention shyness, there was not even a little bit of surprise on her face. Instead she spat out a sentence that made one's teeth fall off. She said, "Sun Darren is too benevolent. Actually one can use an ox." Young lady. Jing Zhi's mouth was wide open. Shen Miao glanced at her. What is there to make a fuss about? In the inner palace, this move was often used to deal with disobedient females. She had not used it before as Shen Miao was used to directly bestow death and was not willing to create more complications. But one had seen Mei Furan punish a palace maid who was eating with the eunuchs. She let someone feed her the aphrodisiac of a bowl and threw that palace maid into the cow pen and tortured her to death. Thus, he was not surprised by Sun Tianjing's methods. He did not know how shocking his actions were in the eyes of Jing Zhi and Guyu. After a long time, Jing Zhi then found her voice and said, "Where does young lady want to go now?" "Let's go to Kai Yun Court." "What is young lady going there for?" Guyu was surprised. Now that second master is not around, is young lady going to look for Wan Yinyang? Shen Miao shook her head. "I am looking for second Shen. Second Furan has gone crazy." Guyu reminded. Not necessarily. The Kai Yin court had been turned upside down. In fact, in just a short few months, the entire Shen residence, or more accurately the second household of the Shen family, which was Kai Yun Yuan, had undergone earth-shattering changes. The second madam, who used to be in her prime, was now a lunatic. The generous and intelligent eldest young miss had become a slut who committed suicide in prison and had an illicit relationship with another man. Even the outstanding second young master became a prisoner in front of the people of the city and died under the executioner's machete. Life was like a drama, and Kai Yun Yuan's drama was too tragic. The only consolation was that second foreign Ren Wanyun still had a second son, Shin Yuanbo, but Shin Yuanbo was raised by old Shin foreign's side. If Ren Wanyun was not crazy, with Shin Yuanbo, she would be able to temporarily sit firmly in the position of the main household. But it was only temporary. Who knew? Would Shin Gui still take concubines in the future? After all, Shin Gui had always been lustful. It was not impossible for him to have a son. Compared to Ren Wanyun's bad luck, Wan Yinyang, who had been deserted for many years, seemed to have ushered in spring. After being submissive for so many years, even her own daughter did not see the light of day for so many years. One did not expect that this time it was like she had the help of God. Even though Shin Gui was indifferent to kinship, he treated females well. As long as Wan Yinyang firmly grasped Shin Gui's heart and regained his favor, Shin Dongling's status would only rise. Dongling, let master change a courtyard for you in a few days. Wan Yinyang was sewing as she smiled at Shin Dongling. Most likely it was because Shin Yuan was already dead and Shin Yuanbo was still young, thus Ren Wanyun was no longer a threat to her. Wan Yinyang's brows were filled with joy and there was a trace of joy in her words. Chapter 351. Change what courtyard? Shin Dongling, who was reading behind the screen, looked up. You have been squeezing in the same courtyard with me. Other young ladies at your age have already arranged their own courtyards, so you should also move out. This place is after all a little crowded. They are D daughters and I am a Shu daughter. Shin Dongling said calmly. Hearing this, Wan Yinyang's heart ached. Shin Dongling's birth was a fact that she could not change and it was also something that she was brooding over. She thought that Shin Dongling was not worse than Shin Qing and Shin Yu, but for the past 10 over years, she could only make Shin Dongling compromise. It was not easy to make it out, so how could she watch Shin Dongling continue to be so cautious? Wan Yinyang said, previously eldest young lady had a courtyard that was vacated so you do not need to sleep in her room and sleep in another room. Eldest young lady's courtyard has a good orientation and the scenery is beautiful so it would be a pity to leave it empty. Now that master treats us well, one think that this request would be agreed. No need, Yinyang. Shin Dongling rejected her suggestion, now is not a good time to stand out. One have endured for more than 10 years and there is no need to rush for a while. Even though father treats us well now, Yinyang also understand what kind of temperament he has. It is better to wait for things to settle down before discussing this matter. Wan Yinyang still wanted to persuade further but suddenly saw her personal maid Lu Hua running in and hurriedly said, Yinyang, 5th young lady came to our courtyard. 5th young lady. Wan Yinyang suddenly stood up, why did she come to look for me? Shin Dongling also looked at Lu Hua. Lu Hua shook her head and said, not to look for Yinyang. This servant saw that she went to the room where second Furen is recuperating. 5th young lady went to see second Furen. Wan Yinyang's voice suddenly rose, why did 5th young lady look for second Furen? Second Furen has already gone crazy. This servant wanted to secretly eavesdrop but 5th young lady brought along a few maids to block it. The rest of the people were far away from the room and could not hear or see. Lu Hua asked, Yinyang, what should be done now? Wan Yinyang walked around the room in bewilderment and muttered to herself, what is going on? Could it be that 5th young lady went to see second Furen? But second Furen and 5th young lady previously had many disagreements so how could 5th young Furen be so kind? She looked at Shin Dongling, Dongling, what do you say? Shin Dongling lowered her eyes and thought for a moment before saying, since one cannot eavesdrop, then stay here obediently and do not ask. 5th younger sister is not a simple person. Since she has done it, she has made thorough preparations. No matter how many methods we use, I think we won't be able to find out. Could it be that this is over? Wan Yinyang was somewhat unwilling. What if she conspires with second Furen to do something? Second madam and fifth younger sister are not the kind of people who would forget enmity with a smile. You and Shinling Shin, Shin Shin, second Shin, and the Shin is, Shin, the Ling, Fu Yang Shin, Fu. Outside, you, Dong, In, Shin, Ling, you, and Shin outside of Kai Yun Yuan, Guyu, Bai Lu and Shuang Jiang stood a few steps away from the house as Jing Zhou followed Shin Miao into the house. The rest of the maids in the courtyard were doing their own things in a well-behaved manner. Ren Wanyun had already gone crazy, so the servants naturally did not need to fawn on her and rush to please her. People were like this, stepping on the weak and fawning on the strong. Moreover, Ren Wanyun's methods of treating the servants were harsh, so compared to Ren Wanyun, they were more willing to fawn on the gentle and virtuous Wan Yinyang. Thus, facing Shin Miao, who had the support of the first household, these maids did not stop her at all. But not everyone was like this. Ren Wanyun had her own confidants for so many years, and that was her personal maids, Xiang Lan and Kai Ju. At this moment in the room, Xiang Lan and Kai Ju were staring at Shin Miao like a tiger watching its prey. Chapter 352. Facing both of their fierce gazes, Shin Miao did not know what to do. Since both of them were not willing to go out, there was no harm in them hearing. On the bed, the Furen was wrapped in a blanket as she sat in the corner. Her eyes were lax and her hair seemed to be combed but messed up by herself. There was even saliva dripping from her clothes. Her lips were slightly moving and she did not look at anyone but only looked up at the sky, not knowing what she was saying. Fifth young lady, now you have seen that our Furen's health is not well, and if you disturb like this, it will only worsen Furen's condition. Xiang Lan said. Today I am here to tell Second Shen about a matter. Shin Miao smiled gently. One think that Second Shen already know about it. Even though she is ill, the news should still be sensitive. Second older brother was executed at noon today and his body is lying in the coffin and will soon be buried. Fifth young lady, Furen is already ill. One cannot listen to these words. Kai Ju shouted sharply. It was just that even though Xiang Lan and Kai Ju had a stern expression, they really did not have the guts to make a move on Shin Miao and forcefully throw her out. Now they knew that Shin Miao was not a person that was easy to deal with. For the second household to be in such a situation, a large part of it was because of Shin Miao secretly adding fuel to the fire. Shin Miao could almost be counted as the second household's enemy, but now not only was Shin Miao scheming, she also had Shin Xan and wife backing her up. In this second household that was getting fewer by the day, no one dared to go against her. Shin Miao did not even bother about the two maids and looked at Ren Wanyun with a smile. One think that Second Shin also know that when second older brother was executed, there was no one in the residence to visit. Second Shu, third Shin, old Furen, not a single one. She looked at Ren Wanyun. I think that if Second Shin was not ill, she would definitely go back to send second older brother on his last journey. Now on the road to the netherworld, second older brother would be alone. How pitiful. Fifth young lady. Xiang Lan could not help but shout again. What are you afraid of? Shin Miao's lips hooked up. Second Shen is now ill and would not understand my words. Could it be that you are afraid that I will agitate Second Shen? Naturally not. Xiang Lan quickly denied. Then you better stay obediently and shut up. Shin Miao raised her brows. Otherwise I have ways to make you never to serve your Furen. Xiang Lan and Kai Ju were shocked in their hearts. The certainty in Shin Miao's words actually made them feel a chill run down their spines. Before second brother left, second aunt fell ill, so she didn't get to see second brother. I think second brother must be very sad in his heart. It's really sad that he didn't even get to see his parents when he died. Ren Wan-yun was still staring at the ceiling with an infatuated look on her face. However, the fingers of the hand that was placed beside her bent slightly. A few days ago Wan Yinyang came to look for me. Shen Miao smiled. It seems that she is anxious to build a good relationship with me. If in the future I speak a few good words for her in front of old Furen, then the possibility of second Shu supporting her as a Pingfei would be much higher. When these words came out, Xianglan and Kai Ju's complexion turned pale. Everyone knew that Wan Yinyang of the second household had regained favor. In the past, Ren Wan-yun had forced Wan Shi to endure silently, and when Wan Shi gained power in one day and was even promoted to be the equal wife, would she not take revenge? She had already separated from Shen Gui and was also disliked by old Shen Furen, so how miserable would Ren Wan-yun's days be in the future? Naturally I am not willing. Shen Miao tilted her head and thought about it. Second Shen is the main household in the residence, so naturally I will stand on Second Shen's side. But Wan Yinyang looked like she was not reconciled. Moreover, now seventh younger brother is still in front of old Furen, but when seventh younger brother grows up, Wan Yinyang would be promoted as a Pingfei and second Shin. You are still ill. Wouldn't seventh younger brother be raised in front of Wan Yinyang? TSK, for Wan Yinyang to build a good relationship with me, is it because of this consideration? Chapter 353. You dare to have any ideas on my seventh older brother? I will definitely make you wish you were dead. In the corner, Ren Wan-yun roared. One did not know why her voice was so rough and unpleasant to listen to. And that pair of eyes that were staring at the sky from the moment they entered the room had unknowingly locked onto Shen Miao's body. There was a fierce glint like that of a vicious wolf. Why would I have any ideas on seventh younger brother? Shen Miao gently smiled. If second Shen do not believe, I can swear that if I have any ideas on seventh older brother, then let the heaven strike me with lightning and die a horrible death. When the words were spoken, there was some surprise in the eyes of the few people in the room. Jing Jie, who had not spoken all along, was somewhat anxious. How could Shen Miao make such a heavy oath? They had always regarded oaths very seriously, and Shen Miao said it so calmly that she did not even have the chance to stop it. Ren Wan-yun did not relax her vigilance against Shen Miao because of this and sneered. You tried every possible means to come here and say all these provocative words to see if I am crazy or not. It would not be just to make this poison oath right. She said, Shen Miao, I cannot win against you. It is me who have underestimated you. If I can redo it, I will definitely kill you before you have grown to this age and will not be soft-hearted. Second Shen really knows how to joke. Shen Miao said, when have you been soft-hearted towards me? You have already forced me to such a point, and Qing'er and Yuaner's mishap is not unrelated to you. If it was not for seventh older brother, I will definitely perish together with you. Ren Wan-yun gritted her teeth. I know that second Shen is also not willing to perish together with seventh younger brother, so I also know that second Shen will not be sick for long. What exactly do you want to do? Ren Wan-yun stared at her. What other means do you have? Do not hesitate to use them. Shen Miao smiled warmly. Second Shen need not be so unreasonable. I came here to give you a way out. Way out? Ren Wan-yun said sadly. Since it has reached such a point, what way out do I have? Could it be that second Shen thinks that the current situation is the worst? Shen Miao was surprised. Second Shen has always been intelligent. How can one be so muddled? What do you want to say? Ren Wan-yun's face sank. It's simple. Shen Miao smiled. Now in the courtyard, Wan Yinyang is coaxing second Shu until he is happy. Second Shen had never thought that if Wan Yinyang gave birth to a son for second Shu, what should seventh brother do? Ren Wan-yun's body stiffened. Second Shin is also well aware of whether Second Shu values Wan Yinyang or Second Shin, thus it is unknown whether Second Shu values Wan Yinyang's son or seventh younger brother. If there was a day when Wan Yinyang was promoted to be a Ping wife, this second household would have 2D sons, but these 2D sons are not biological brothers. You guess, Shin Miao lowered her voice, will they kill each other? Ren Wan Yun's heart jumped when she heard this. That one has Wan Yinyang's protection, seventh younger brother has Second Shin's protection, but Second Shin, at that time, will you still be able to speak in the second household like before? Shin Miao's words stabbed the heart and Ren Wan Yun could not help but retort, that slut did not give birth to a son before and it is even more impossible for her to give birth to a son in the future. Second Shin is indeed smart. Shin Miao sighed, this is what I want to say. Could it be that Second Shin thinks that other than Wan Yinyang, Second Shu will not have any other woman? She was so magnanimous in discussing the matters between men and women of the elders and her composure made one gasp in amazement. Ren Wan Yun was surprised by Shin Miao's words. That's right, she was clearer than anyone else about Shin Gui's conduct. How could Shin Gui only have one woman? When she was still the matriarch, Shin Gui would bring concubines into the house one after another. If it was not for the fact that she fed those foxes the broth to end their offspring, one feared that the second household would be overcrowded. You see, one can guard against it for a while but not for a lifetime. Even if one can guard against one Yinyang, there will still be other Yinyangs. There are innumerable women in the world that can give birth to children and there are also innumerable women that want to enter the second household. Unless Second Shin can still control the inner courtyard like in the past and feed all of Second Shu's women the broth to end their offspring, but does the current Second Shin still have that ability? Even if there is, that year Wan Yinyang still gave birth to third older sister. In the future, will there be another Wan Yinyang? There was a little panic on Ren Wan Yun's face. Shin Miao's words were stabbing a knife into her soft ribs. The only thing she could rely on was giving birth to a son. If she did not even have this, what would happen in the future? Second Shin, could it be that you want to see the family that you have worked so hard to manage, the money in the residence, in the end not be obtained by second older brother or seventh younger brother, but by another woman's son? Second older brother is brilliant and outstanding. It was obvious that everything in the second household should belong to him, but now someone else came into the house and made wedding clothes for others. Are you willing? Ren Wan Yun stared at Shin Miao. What do you want to say? I will give you a way out. Shin Miao smiled gently and took out a bag of things from her sleeves and placed it in Ren Wan Yun's hands. Infertility medicine, for males to use. She said softly. Chapter 354. Infertility medicine, for males to use. Ren Wan Yun lowered her head and looked at the paper bag that Shin Miao placed in her hands and could not help but tremble. How is it a good idea to give any yin-yang an infertility medicine? Even if one cannot give birth to a son, there will be a second one and a third one. Second Shin, you will not be able to guard against it all. Shin Miao's words seemed to be slightly bewitching and when it landed on one's ears, it was pleasing to the ears. Why should I believe you? Who knows if it is arsenic inside? Ren Wan Yun said contemptuously. If Second Shin does not believe me, naturally one can let the maids bring some out to ask the physician or find an animal to feed it. If it is not possible, one can throw it away and buy it yourself. I am only pointing the way and Second Shin has to be willing to do it. Why do I want to do this? Ren Wan Yun stared at Shin Miao and said coldly. Why? Shin Miao thought for a moment, most likely if Second Shu does not have the ability to bear children in the future, then seventh younger brother's son position would be stable. Not only that, as Second Shu's only successor, seventh younger brother would definitely be able to obtain Second Shu's favor. Things are precious when they are rare. Ren Wanyun smiled. Do you think that I do not know what you are planning? Shen Miao, I have underestimated you. You want the second household to have no descendants. Words cannot be said like this. Shen Miao pretended to be surprised. How can the second household be considered to have no descendants? Isn't there still seventh younger brother? But could it be that second Shen thinks that in the future there will be another child with second Shu? She jokingly said, even if second Shen has this ability, it would also depend on whether second Shu is willing or not. Presumptuous. Xiang Lan angrily rebuked. You do not know shame. Ren Wanyun was so angry that her face turned red. Shen Miao's words were clearly ridiculing that she was old and that Shen Gui, that kind of person who lusted after beauty, was dismissive of her. But Ren Wanyun also understood that after so many years, Shen Gui was no longer as gentle to her as before. Her face was not attractive to Shen Gui and it would be difficult to have another child. Be it shameless or presumptuous, one is after all thinking for you. Shen Miao smiled gently. I have already given second Shen a way out. It is up to second Shen to choose whether to walk out or block the road. She stood up and seemed to have thought of something. She tilted her head and said, of course, second aunt can also tell second uncle about this. After all, you are a family. However, I have to remind you that my parents and old madam have already fallen out with each other. They've already shed all pretense of cordiality, so I'm not afraid of anything else. Ren Wanyun sat down and did not speak as Xiang Lan and Kai Ju stared at Shen Miao vigilantly. That's all I have to say. Goodbye. Shen Miao smiled and walked out. After Shen Miao left, Xiang Lan stepped forward and looked at Ren Wanyun to ask, Furen, really want to listen to fifth young lady's words? Fifth young lady definitely does not have any good intentions. Kai Ju echoed, her doing this is obviously to deliberately go against master. It is going against master. Ren Wanyun said in a low voice, but now, master and I are no longer on the same line. Madam means. Xiang Lan's eyes widened. Ren Wanyun lowered her head and said, let me think again. In the eastern courtyard, naturally there were people paying attention to every move at this end. When Shen Miao and Jing Zhi just stepped out of the door, they saw an unfamiliar maid coming over with a smile. Fifth young lady, Wan Yinyang heard that you are in the courtyard and would like to invite you in for a chat. There are still some matters. Another day. Shen Miao did not give any face at all and directly refused. That maid was somewhat embarrassed but was helpless and could only watch Shen Miao and entourage walk away before turning around to report to Wan Yinyang. Chapter 355. Is she trying to draw a line with us? Wan Yinyang was somewhat angry but there was more worry as she said to Shen Dongling, could this fifth young lady be walking together with Furen and want to deal with us together with Furen? How is it possible? Shen Dongling shook her head. Because of eldest sister's matter, they would not be together. But why is fifth young lady always turning a blind eye to our good intentions? Wan Yinyang paced back and forth. Could it be that she looks down on our background? Speaking till here, her voice dimmed. After all, she is a young lady, Yinyang. Shen Dongling put down the book and said with some headache, what are you thinking about? Fifth younger sister is not willing to associate with us and it is definitely not because of our own reasons. I see that fifth younger sister is not warm to the entire Shen residence and one fear that she does not want to have any connection with the second household, thus she turned a blind eye to us. Since that is the case, there is no use in fawning and it is better to do less of such things in the future. But Wan Yinyang still wanted to say something. There is no but. Shen Dongling interrupted her words. As long as we abide by the rules and do not make any mistakes, naturally there will not be any trouble. At the other end, Jingzhe, who had returned to the room, was asking Shen Miao softly, "Young lady, will second foreign really drug second master?" "Of course." Shen Miao looked at her nails and said lightly, "Ren Wanyun values children the most, and now that one son and one daughter have been lost, there is only Shen Yuanbo left. Unfortunately Shen Gui is not a kind-hearted person, so only by drugging Shen Gui would one be able to preserve Shen Yuanbo's position. But what if second foreign tells second master about this matter?" Guyu had been worried about this matter. No, if Shen Gui knew that he was drugged with an infertility drug, he would definitely hate Ren Wanyun to the bones. Even if Shen Yuanbo is his only child, he would also vent his anger on Shen Yuanbo. Even if Ren Wanyun wanted Shen Yuanbo to live well, she would hide this matter to death. Perhaps Shen Gui will never discover the fact that he is unable to give birth to a son. Even if the doctor had seen it, he would never think that it was Ren Wanyun who drugged him. Then, Jingzhe clenched her teeth and seemed to be hesitating before finally saying, "Even if second foreign secretly drugged second master and second master really could not give birth to a son, isn't there still a seventh young master? The seventh young master is still young, but when he grows up and understands, he will probably seek revenge on Miss for the sake of the second young master and eldest young mistress. To raise an enemy since young, and young lady had made such an oath." Shen Miao said in front of Ren Wanyun that she must not have any ideas on Shen Yuanbo, otherwise the heavens would strike her with thunder. Such a heavy poison oath, even Jingzhe was somewhat shocked to hear it now. "Since the oath was made, I did not have any intention to hit Shen Yuanbo," Shen Miao said. "Even so, seventh young master will definitely treat young lady as an enemy." Guyu reminded, "There is an enemy that is always lurking in the dark, let's wait until he grows up." Shen Miao smiled. Unfortunately, Shen Yuanbo did not have the chance to grow up. Just 1 year later, there was a plague in the Ding capital and Shen Yuanbo died because of smallpox. At that time Shen Miao had already married to Fu Xiuyi, and at that time the entire Ding capital was in a state of panic. Luckily Shen Xian and the rest were fighting in the northwest region and escaped the calamity. It was still alright for the noble families in the city, but many of the poor commoners died. Shen Yuanbo was not able to escape the calamity. Shen Miao had always believed that heaven's justice was clear and karma was not good, it was just that one had to see if the retribution was enough. The sins that Shen Gui and wife did in the past lifetime was retribution on Shen Yuanbo. But the second household still had Shen Yuan and Shen Qing, and in this lifetime without Shen Yuan and Shen Qing, following the path of the previous lifetime, Shen Yuanbo would eventually lose his life. Chapter 356. Rather than being ruthless now, it was better to let them live with hope. Shen Gui thought that he still had a son, and Ren Wanyun also thought that Shen Yuanbo would replace Shen Yuan, but there would be a day when Shen Yuanbo was unable to escape the heavenly Tao's misfortune. At that time, the seeds of despair hidden in the second household would break through the soil and drown the entire second household. The second household was destined to have no descendants, but now they were filled with hope, not knowing that the footsteps of misfortune were slowly approaching them, waiting for the scythe to fall and completely reap the lives of the entire household. The chess path was already prepared and the chess pieces were moving forward step by step. Was this not good? Young lady, Mo Qing came over previously. Bai Lu walked in and said with some difficulty, he said that the banknotes that were previously given were all spent. Still need to go to Bao Xianglu. Bai Lu was somewhat embarrassed and also somewhat did not understand. How would there be a master who would give money to the subordinate to find a young lady? Moreover, it was not an ordinary squandering. How was this letting the subordinate do the work? It was clearly giving money for the subordinate to enjoy. What was even more hateful was that Mo Qing got such a good job, and every time he would put on a look of pain that made one's teeth hurt. go and take another 500 taels of silver for him. Shen Miao said. Bai Lu revealed a pained expression and heard Shen Miao instructing, also let Mo Qing say that sentence to Lu Ying. The few maids in the room were surprised for a moment and looked curiously at Shen Miao. After all, none of them knew what that sentence that Shen Miao said was. Just as Bai Lu was about to go out, she suddenly remembered something. Young lady, previously Rong Jing Tang's Zhang Mama came over and seemed to want to inquire about the matter of master and foreign separating from the family. Ever since that day when she heard the truth from Jing Guanxing's mouth, Luo Shuiyan and old Shen Furen had a big fight and she told the matter to Shen Exayan. Naturally Shen Exayan was unable to restrain his anger and immediately went to Rong Jing Tang to reason with old Furen. Luo Shuiyan wholeheartedly wanted to separate from the family and after the matter, Shen Exayan was disheartened with the Shen family and naturally agreed. Even if they did not want the assets that old General Shen had left behind, they still wanted to firmly separate from the family. Old Shen Furen knew that she still needed to borrow Shen Exayan's money and prestige, so in a moment of desperation, she pretended to faint from a stroke, which made one feel angry and funny at the same time. Now that Zhang Mama came to inquire about the news, naturally she wanted to probe the first household's intentions and thought that Shen Exayan and Luo Shuiyan only said so in a moment of anger. If she comes to ask again, tell her that we have made up our mind to separate from the family, and ask her to take good care of old madam. If old madam does not recover after a long time, it would be good to ask the elders of the family to come. The elders in the tribe had always looked down on old Shen Furen's background and when old General Shen was alive, he favored Shen Exayan so naturally the elders would be biased toward Shen Exayan. When the people from the clan came to separate from the family, they would definitely not let old Shen Furen get any benefits. This servant understands. Bai Lu smiled as she left the room. Shen Miao sat down in front of the table. This lifetime's journey had just begun and one had to plan so much. However, it was not an easy matter to protect the Shen family at the same time as taking revenge. It had to be done step by step. These disturbances in the Ding capital were just a joke after one's meal. After talking about it, one would laugh it off and no one would remember it. Even if it was a topic of conversation, after a few days, it would be covered by fresh matters. When people die, the lights go out. The world was just that cold. Bao Xianglu was still as lively as usual. Recently there was a new batch of Persian dancers who were beautiful and bold. All the aristocratic young masters in the capital flocked to them like ducks. Bao Xianglu's business was flourishing but now it was almost overcrowded. Men were greedy for novelty and liked the new and hated the old. The new dancers were very popular for a while the former top courtesans seemed to be deserted and depressed. However, among these greedy men, there was one who was different. When he walked to the door, the young lady at the door waved her handkerchief and giggled, "Master Mo, today there is no need to order young lady Lu Ying, right?" Chapter 357. Mo Qing placed the money in the young lady's hand and said, "Old rules." That young lady was half jealous and half envious as she said, "This lord is indeed a sentimental person. Lu Ying is really a blessing that was cultivated in the previous lifetime." Finishing, she twisted her waist and went upstairs to call someone. When everyone was rushing over to the new young lady, Mo Qing was unshakable as he pointed at Lu Ying's name. Those who did not know would think that he had fallen in love with Lu Ying, but only he and Lu Ying knew whether he had fallen in love or not. Opposite Bao Xianglu, at the window seat of Kuai Lu, three people were drinking with each other. Ji Yushu pointed to Mo Qing's figure from afar as he entered Bao Xianglu. "Look, look." He went over again. "What is there to look at?" Gao Yang rolled his eyes at Ji Yushu. "Go once every 3 days, one night at a time and leave at dawn the next day without staying for a moment longer." This is something that you've memorized by heart. Is there a need to be surprised? Ji Yushu was not to be outdone as he stared back at Gao Yang. Are you stupid? We both know about this, but Xia Sanxiong has just come back, how would he know? I'm not trying to make it clear to him. Opposite of the two of them, Xia Jingxing was leaning on the sofa lazily looking at Bao Xianglu. Today, for the first time, he did not wear purple clothes but wore a black narrow-waist long robe, making him look much colder. However, upon closer inspection, there seemed to be a travel-worn expression on his face. It was obvious that he had just returned from his journey. Xia-san, how did it go? How are those people? Gao Yang asked. They're all death warriors. If we can't get anything out of them, we'll kill them all. Xia Jingxing was a little distracted. Time is tight, we have to move quickly. What is the use of moving fast? Ji Yushu complained, the thing was not found. Shen Yuan had previously made a move and was close to Fu Xiuyi, so he might have some chips in his hands. But now that he is dead. Gao Yang muttered to himself, Fu Xiuyi should think of ways to find something from Shen Yuan's body. I want to make another trip to the Shen residence. Xia Jingxing frowned, it is impossible not to find it. Hey, forget it, let's not talk about this for now. Ji Yushu interrupted their conversation, speaking of which, we have been waiting here for so long and see this surnamed Mo running to Bao Xianglu every 3 to 5 days. What is the meaning of this? Could it be that Miss Shen treated her servants so generously? Even the money for the servant to look for the young lady was taken out as well. For such a cushy job, to be so generous, you are even more generous than me, the shopkeeper of Feng Xian pawn shop. Have you ever seen a girl run away at dawn every day? Gao Yang looked at Ji Yushu. Why do I remember that when you look for young lady Xiaoyao, you would always stay in others' boudoir and not leave, wishing that you could stick to her side every day? The spring night is bitter and short, so how would one be so unromantic? At least you would draw her brows and talk to her. Leaving within 2 hours every time, it is like completing a task. Have your eyes grown to the sky? Xia Jingxing glanced at the two of them. Can't you see that there's someone on the other side? His eyes swept downwards and the other two were surprised for a moment. Following Xia Jingxing's gaze, they saw a green-clad male standing at the corner of the street opposite Bao Xianglu, looking at Lu Ying's little building in a daze. Looks rather ordinary. Ji Yushu said, seeing him dressed so shabbily, one look and one can tell that he wants to go in to look for a young lady. Does he have money to satisfy his craving? What is the difference? This person. Gao Yang looked from afar, the figure is somewhat familiar, as if one had seen it somewhere. Pei Lang. Xia Jingxing said. Who is Pei Lang? Ji Yushu asked. Guang Wentang's teacher. I remember. Gao Yang also said, previously seen him at the palace banquet. But what is he doing here? Chapter 358. Teacher. Ji Yushu swallowed his saliva. Teacher also came to visit the brothel. This Guang Wentang was said to be the academy that all the noble families in the Ding capital had to enter, so how could a teacher be so morally corrupt? You visit the brothel all day, why is it not morally corrupt? Gao Yang asked Ji Yushu. Ji Yushu retorted, I do not teach students. Shut up. Xia Jingxing said, such a big person is here and both of you did not discover it. I also do not know him. Ji Yushu felt wronged, there are so many people coming and going outside Bao Xianglu and I only pay attention to the abnormal. This gentleman did not look any different, so how would I know that he is a teacher? Gao Yang looked at Xia Jingxing, you feel that there is a problem with Pei Lang. But he is just a poor scholar. Shen Miao never do unnecessary things, there must be a reason for her subordinate to look for Lu Ying. Previously I did not understand, but after seeing him, I understand. Xie Jingxing's eyes landed on Pei Lang in the distance. You are saying? Gao Yang was deep in thought. This Shen Miao took such a big detour, and it was actually directed at Pei Lang. Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up into a smile, and there seemed to be a deep meaning in his eyes. One do not know why, but feel that Shen Miao especially values this Pei Lang. From the things that were investigated, Pei Lang is just a poor scholar, so there must be a problem. This is not simple. Ji Yushu exclaimed, I know the reason behind it. Gao Yang and Xie Jingxing turned their heads to stare at him. Ji Yushu coughed and said with a beaming smile, too simple. I looked at the figure and saw that this person should be a jade tree with extraordinary looks, and in addition he is a teacher, so he would definitely show that he is knowledgeable. Shen young lady is after all in her budding years, and when such a young lady met a talented and good-looking teacher, it would be the first awakening of love and her heart would be in love. Who would have thought that the teacher is a hypocrite who visits the brothel? In a fit of anger, Shen young lady simply let her subordinate to buy that courtesan's brand. Wait. Gao Yang asked, why Shen Miao likes Pei Lang but buy Lu Ying's brand? Ji Yushu thought hard for a while before replying, most likely it is because Pei Lang could not afford to buy Lu Ying's brand, so Shen young lady let the servants buy Lu Ying's brand. Pei Lang could not even be compared to a servant, so he must be angry in his heart. Shen young lady wants to anger Pei Lang to death. The more Ji Yushu spoke, the more excited he became, until his saliva flew and he almost climbed onto the table. You all look. Pei Lang had seriously injured young Miss Shen. You're just a young lady, yet you're willing to throw away 1,000 pieces of gold for your beauty. Gao Yang held his forehead with a headache. Ji Yushu, did you listen to some inexplicable drama in the brothel again? You guys have fun, I'll leave first. Xie Jingxing stood up expressionlessly and glanced at Ji Yushu. If you are bored and the tower prison lacks people, then pack up and go over with Tai Yi. Ji Yushu immediately became like a frosted eggplant and did not make a sound. On the other side, in the Firefly hut, Mo Qing was still sitting at the table drinking tea as usual. Lu Ying had now completely given up on Mo Qing. Previously she still wanted to conquer this man, but now she did not even have any thoughts of conquering and had completely lost her temper. Thus she did not even comb her makeup and walked over to pick up the silver ingot that Mo Qing placed on the table and put it into the box. She then sat opposite Mo Qing and poured a cup of tea to take a sip before saying in a lukewarm manner, many thanks to Gentleman Mo for supporting Lu Ying as usual, so that Lu Ying would not be unable to eat in such a bad time. When the other young ladies were snatched away by the new Persian dancers, only Mo Qing continued to support her. The young ladies in the building were extremely envious and jealous of Lu Ying, but did not know that in Lu Ying's eyes, Mo Qing was just an eccentric person. Chapter 359. Most likely Mo Qing liked to take the money and stare blankly in the brothel. Lu Ying also did not intend to chat with Mo Qing. This Mo Qing had come over so many times, but he never spoke a word to her. If it was not that he would speak to the young lady downstairs, Lu Ying would think that Mo Qing was a mute. But today, Mo Qing had spoken to her for the first time. Mo Qing said, "It is not me." She was too surprised that Lu Ying could only stare at him. "Oh. The one who gave you the money is not me." Mo Qing said. Lu Ying was puzzled. "What money?" "My master wants me to come here every 3 days to look for you and give you the money and do nothing." This was most likely the longest sentence that Mo Qing had said since he came to Bao Xianglu, but when the words were spoken, Lu Ying's eyes suddenly became vigilant. She stood up. "Who is your master?" Mo Qing shook his head. "Cannot say." "You." Lu Ying glared at him. Master said that after a few more days, she will come and see you. Mo Qing said, do not receive other guests for the time being. Lu Ying smiled, eldest brother, I do not know who your master is and do not know what he wants to do, but I am a young lady of Baoxiang Lu, and now that the economy is so bad, I am not the top card that was just made famous. If I do not receive other guests, what would I eat or drink? You will support me. Mo Qing did not say anything. Seeing that Mo Qing did not say anything, Lu Ying became even angrier and a nameless fire rose in her heart. At this time, no matter if it was sincere or not, other males would still say a few comforting words, I will support you. Even if it was to deceive others, no one would take anyone's words seriously in the brothel. This Mo Qing was good, he was simply a blockhead and loved to be serious, not even willing to say a few good words to deceive others. Once he got angry, he wanted to coax others, but just as he opened his mouth, Lu Ying became silent again. Mo Qing was indeed not a person in the brothel, and he himself said that he was only acting on his master's orders. Thinking of this, she felt that it was meaningless to ask him about these things. Mo Qing saw Lu Ying's expression changing and was somewhat baffled. He hesitated for a moment before saying the words that Shen Miao did not instruct him to say. He said, my master is a good person, don't be afraid. Lu Ying was surprised for a moment and looked at Mo Qing, but Mo Qing lowered his head to drink his tea. Inexplicably, Lu Ying's mood became better and she said, why should I believe you? Mo Qing, that night, there were no stars and no moon. Shen Miao stayed in Luo Shuaiyan's room and chatted with Luo Shuaiyan before preparing to return to her courtyard. On the way, Jingzhi told Shen Miao about the news that she had inquired during the day. Young lady, one heard that the Jing family will set off for Suzhou this afternoon, and before leaving, they took away all the valuable furnishings in Rongjing Tang's side courtyard. This is really like a robber's action. Old Furen was so angry that she almost had a stroke again. This stroke again was said with a hint of mockery. Everyone knew that when old Shen Furen was flustered and exasperated, she would involuntarily have a stroke. But now it could be considered that she had met her match. The shameless one had met an even more shameless one. Speaking of which, one really admired the Jing family's face. To be able to take away Rongjing Tang's things with such ease, it was really strange to the extreme. One did not think that the Jing family would speak in such a dignified manner and solemnly vow to seek an explanation for Biao young lady, but now they returned to Suzhou with their tails between their legs, so Biao young lady did not care. Knowing that Biao young lady would not have a good ending in the Sun family, but did not think of any way at all. Originally they said it so ruthlessly, but it was only to ask for more money. Jingzhi said. Commoners do not fight with officials. Shen Miao's lips slightly hooked up, one think that the Jing family also know that they have caused a big disaster. Not a good person. Jingzhi's lips twitched. Shen Miao declined to comment. The Jing family rushed back to Suzhou through the night, but how could they rush back in time? Sun Tianzheng was not a soft persimmon. Initially when Shen Qiu had an accident, Jing Chu escaped, but the rest of the Jing family did not escape. Sun Tianzheng was never a soft-hearted person, so no one knew what happened on the way back to Suzhou. Just as they walked to the courtyard, Shen Miao was about to push the door open to enter when she suddenly paused and swept a glance at the window. Jingzhi. Shen Miao said, go and boil the water first. I want to bathe. Make it hotter. Jingzhi was startled for a moment before nodding her head in agreement. Shen Miao pushed the door open and walked in. She walked past the outer hall, past the folding screen and walked into her own boudoir before closing the door. The light of the oil lamp swayed slightly, and one could see a person sitting crookedly in front of the table. His robe seemed to be flowing dark gold, making the darkness in the room shine brightly. He propped his head up with one hand and the other hand was flipping through the books on Shen Miao's table in boredom. When he heard movement, he casually turned his head and revealed a handsome face with red lips and white teeth. "Why did you return so late?" Xie Jingxing was somewhat dissatisfied. "I did not seem to have invited you." Shen Miao looked at him calmly. "Little Marquis Xie. I waited for you for a long time." Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. "I am already hungry." Shen Miao said, "Get lost." Chapter 360. Get lost. Hearing that, Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up and turned his head to look at Shen Miao with interest. "Long time no see. Your temper is getting more and more irritable." Shen Miao sat down in front of the table and said coldly, "You still like to come uninvited as usual." If Xie Jingxing was seen in her room, one did not know how much trouble it would cause. But this person always liked to do such things, as if there was danger in his bones. Shen Miao had already decided to stay away from Xie Jingxing as the other person had too many secrets, and now Xie Jingxing came over himself. How could she not be angry? "Passing by this place and conveniently came over to see you." Xie Jingxing shrugged his shoulders and changed to a more comfortable position. Today he was wearing plain clothes with a white collar. It was the season of snow, but because of his outstanding brows, the room was filled with the feeling of spring. He stroked his chin and said, "There is one more thing to ask you." "Speak." Shen Miao was not willing to say a word more to him. When Xie Jingxing saw Shen Miao's attitude, he was not annoyed and said, "Is there anyone in the residence that Shen Yuan trusts?" Hearing that, Shen Miao looked at Xie Jingxing with some surprise. She did not think that the person that Xie Jingxing wanted to ask was Shen Yuan. Even though she was not clear of Xie Jingxing's purpose, she still said, "No." Shen Yuan's return to the capital was short and he is not close to the people in the residence. "Why did you ask him?" "Just came over from his courtyard." Xie Jingxing said lazily, "Did not find anything so came over to ask." Shen Miao's eyes drooped as she pondered. Could it be that Xie Jingxing wanted to find something at Shen Yuan's place but could not find it, so he thought that Shen Yuan had passed the thing to someone he trusted, thus he inquired from her. "What exactly are you looking for?" Shen Miao asked, "Is it the same as the thing in Prince Yu Residence's secret chamber?" When the words were said, the room suddenly became quiet for a moment. For a moment, Shen Miao could feel the biting cold air that burst out from Xie Jingxing's side. But that dangerous atmosphere only lasted for a moment and very quickly Xie Jingxing laughed. When he laughed, he was as elegant as jade, but that pair of peach blossom eyes could not conceal the sharpness. Xie Jingxing did not answer Shen Miao's words but asked, "These days you are also living well. One heard that the second household of the Shen family is about to be defeated. Little Marquis knows the matters of the Shen residence like the back of his hand. If one did not know, one would think that you are from the Shen residence." Shen Miao ridiculed. Xie Jingxing spread out his hands. "No choice, the Shen residence's guards are like decorations and the things that happened were interesting, so it would be hard to not know." He sized up Shen Miao. "It is just that I have underestimated your ruthlessness. You can give it a try too." Xie Jingxing looked at her with a smile. "I don't have that much time." "It sounds like you are very busy." Shen Miao stared at him. "But you have so much free time to visit other people's mansions." When she said this, she showed a little anger. Xie Jingxing could always easily draw out the little emotions in her heart. If Jingzhe, Gu Yu, and the rest were to see this, they would definitely be shocked by Shen Miao's current expression. Because it had been a long time since Shen Miao had revealed such frank emotions. Whether it was anger or annoyance, these were all things that the previous Shen Miao would have. Xie Jingxing said, "Young lady's temper is always so heavy." Shen Miao said in a bad mood, "The the questions have already been asked and you are still not leaving. Xie Jingxing stood up and patted his clothes. He really opened the back window and planned to leave from the window when he suddenly thought of something and turned back to look at her strangely before asking, almost forgot to ask you. Shen Miao, do you admire Pei Lang? Shen Miao. Before she could speak, she saw Xie Jingxing looking at her from head to toe with disdain in his eyes. It should also be useless. His figure disappeared in a blink of an eye. Chapter 361. This bastard. Shen Miao almost ground her teeth. But one saw Jing Zhe knocking on the door from the outside. Young lady, the water has started to boil. This servant will help you put in the spices. Upon entering, she asked curiously, why is young lady standing in front of the window? Be careful not to catch a cold. Shen Miao withdrew her gaze. Nothing, I just chased away a wild cat. A wild cat. Jing Zhe smiled. It is common for wild cats to appear in this season, but they only disturb one's dreams. One will chase them out tomorrow to save trouble. It is better to add arsenic. Shen Miao said, clean death. Jing Zhe was somewhat puzzled. At the other end of the Shen residence, Wan Yinyang's eyes were filled with worry and seemed to be somewhat resentful as she said to Shen Dongling, one do not know what fifth young lady said to Furen that day, but these days the servants in Kai Yun Yuan said that Furen's illness is getting better day by day. Now that he recognized him, he didn't throw a tantrum. Now that he was able to do things, he even asked the servant beside him to cook porridge for his master. It seemed like he wanted to regain his master's favor. If that day really comes, I'm afraid that it will be another day of suffering for us. Wan Yinyang was somewhat complaining. It seems that fifth young lady really want to help Furen and even treat Furen's illness. Shen Dongling was combing her long hair in front of the table. When she let her long hair down, it just so happened that she was facing the light, and the pale color on her face eased up a bit. Her face became even sharper, and her eyes were big. She was a vivid little beauty. She said, Yinyang is worrying too much. No matter how great fifth sister's ability is, it is impossible for her to bring the dying back to life. It seems that Madam has always been pretending to be crazy. Fifth younger sister said something to her and made her think it through and stop pretending. What? Wan Yinyang was shocked. Linger, you said that Furen had been acting crazy all along. Then for so long, Master has been taking care of us. Isn't it all seen by Madam? Once Madam has the chance, she will definitely not let us off. What's there to worry about, Aunt? Shen Dongling casually combed her hair with a silver comb as she said, because of Dejijian's second brother's matter, Father already looks down on Furen. Even if Madam really woke up, Father would at most be tolerant towards her on the surface, but in his heart, he would definitely be disgusted. It is impossible for Furen to regain her previous position and Furen herself knows this. Yinyang can relax. Wan Yinyang was puzzled, since Furen knew that Master would not forgive her, why did she not continue to pretend to be crazy? What did fifth miss say to her that made her change her mind? Madam has nothing but seventh younger brother now. Fifth younger sister is probably making a fuss about seventh younger brother's matter. Yinyang must also work hard to give father a son. No matter if it's a bastard son or a legitimate son, as long as you give birth to a son, you will be able to stand firm here in the future. No one will dare to step on your head. Wan Yinyang smiled bitterly. How would she not want to give birth to a son? In the early years, she was completely suppressed by Ren Wanyun, and if she did not give birth to Shen Dongling, who was a daughter, both mother and daughter would not be able to live until now. Now Ren Wanyun was crazy, but Shen Gui had always been fickle in relationships and she was not a young female, so how could she keep Shen Gui's heart? How could they coincidentally give birth to a son? As her thoughts ran wild, Wan Yinyang diverted the topic. What is the use of saying all these? Linga might as well guess what fifth young lady is trying to do. Helping foreign is the same as going against us. That might not be so. Shen Dongling shook her head. Fifth younger sister is not a simple person, and currently our position in the second household is not high. Even so, it is already very good. In short, do not get involved in these matters and live your own life, otherwise one would accidentally invite trouble upon oneself. Chapter 362. Wan Yinyang listened with fear and trepidation and asked tentatively, so, do not look, do not ask and do not speak. Shen Dongling looked at herself in the mirror. Let nature take its course. There will be a day when we can live a good life. In the Shen residence, not only the people of Kai Yun Yuan were discussing about the matter, in Qiu Shui Yuan, Ren Wan Yun's name was also mentioned. Chen Roqiu was wearing a plain white robe as she sat on the bed and said, Second Saw's health is getting better. Master, what did second older brother's side say? Shen Wan rubbed his forehead. Because of Shen Yuan's matter, the colleagues in court were quite critical of the Shen family. Even he was implicated, and these days were not easy. He shook his head. Second older brother did not mention about this matter. Even if second Saw is really well, the second household would only be left with seventh older brother. Chen Roqiu said, second older brother's temperament is. In the future, when each household brings concubines back, one fear. Speaking till here, there was a feeling of the fox grieving for the rabbit's death. The difference between her and Ren Wanyun was that Chen Roqiu was able to firmly grasp Shen Wan's heart, but the third household did not have any sons, and now that Shen Yuan was dead, in old Shen Furen's eyes, one feared that she was anxious to let her two sons bear branches and disperse leaves. Shen Gui's side was unfilial and was not a devoted person, but on Shen Wan's side, if he was pressed, Chen Roqiu could not help but panic. How long could a man's favor last? But her stomach did not live up to expectations. Shen Wan noticed that Chen Roqiu's expression was ugly and asked puzzledly, what is wrong with you? Is your body not feeling well? Chen Roqiu forced a smile and shook her head, just thought of eldest brother and eldest Saw's matter. After a pause, Chen Roqiu then said, eldest brother and eldest Saw have already decided to separate and even threatened to invite the elders of the family. One fear that they are not afraid of carrying the charge of being unfilial. This matter was not handled properly by mother. Shen Wan said, being held by others, and if eldest brother was angered, he would mention the matter of mother framing Chio'er and the entire capital would poke our backbones. Chen Roqiu nodded her head, correct. Most likely it is because of this point that eldest brother and eldest Saw are so sure. Chen Roqiu said, it has been peaceful for so many years. Why is there a need to separate at this juncture? She could not help but think of Shen Miao. Ever since Shen Miao's temperament changed, many things in the Shen residence had quietly changed. In the past, Shen Axian and wife treated the rest of the Shen family well, but that was because Shen Miao treated them well. Now that Shen Miao showed her dissatisfaction, Shen Axian and wife's attitude immediately changed. Shen Wan sighed as Chen Roqiu asked, Master, is there any leeway to turn this matter around? Shen Wan shook his head. If it were us, we wouldn't be able to accept it either. Big brother and his family were people who couldn't tolerate a grain of sand in their eyes, and the one they valued the most was Xiaowu. The Jing family and mother conspired against Chio'er and Xiaowu, which was a taboo of eldest brother. They were already being merciful by only separating from the family. If it was eldest brother's temper in the past, I'm afraid he would have flipped this Shen residence upside down. But Chen Roqiu said, it's not a good thing for us to separate now. Shen Wan looked out of the window. Now that the second household has suffered heavy losses, second older brothers and my career are blocked. In the past we could still rely on eldest brother's influence, but once the family is separated, everyone would know that the Shin family is not in harmony, and to curry favor with eldest brother, they would not associate with us. The Shin family's road would only be more difficult. Not only that, the money in the public purse. Chen Roqiu reminded. In the past Shin Xian's rewards were numerous, but he was unable to spend it all year round in the northwest region, so he handed it all over to the public purse. Old Shin Furen spent money extravagantly and Ren Wanyun occasionally had to subsidize it, so he lived like this. Now that the family was separated, even if Shin Xian did not want the assets that the old general left behind, their days would only get more difficult. Chapter 363. If it is only like this, then it is fine. Shin Wan's eyes flashed a trace of gloominess. After the separation of the family, with eldest brother's military strength and reputation, he would only get better, and at the end he would suppress us. Comparing the two powers, one would have to reach this step. Chen Roqiu's heart was shocked when she heard it. She had been married to the Shin residents for so many years and naturally knew of the Shin residence's appearance. Shin Xian and wife were not in the residence all year round, so they did not know, but she and Ren Wanyun were well aware of it. In this Shin residence, Shin Xian and Shin Gui brothers did not crawl out from the same mother's womb so naturally. It was not sincere. The better Shin Xian lived, the worse the other two households would be. There would be a day when everyone would be in opposition, but one did not think that this situation would come so quickly. Master, even if it is for Yuer, one cannot let us be suppressed. Chen Roqiu massaged his shoulders, but how to deal with them? Now that eldest brother is wary of us, it would not be that easy to take action. Shin Wan shook his head. Moreover, his soldiers are not ordinary, so it would be harder to find loopholes. One must wait for an opportunity. Shin Wan said, the most urgent matter is to find a good family for Yuer. Pay attention these days. Chen Roqiu probed, Master, His Highness Prince Ding. First, one must not have any ideas on Prince Ding. Shin Wan said sharply, just after the matter of Yuan, the people in court are afraid of getting involved with the Shin family, and one need to pay more attention to the princes. If one were to think of Prince Ding at this time, Prince Ding would not be happy. Chen Roqiu nodded her head. This concubine understands. Master should also rest early. On the morning of the second day, Shin Miao had just eaten when she saw Shuang Jiang panting as she ran in. Upon entering the room, she said, Young lady. Something happened. Speak slowly if there is something to say. Why are you so anxious? Guyu reprimanded. Shuang Jiang stuck out her tongue but still could not hold it back and spilled everything out. A few days ago, did the Jing family not set off back to Suzhou? Today the officials from that side said that the Jing family met with bandits on the way back and were all killed by the bandits. Knowing that the Jing family and Old Furen have some relations, the officials then came to inform. Shuang Jiang patted her chest and said with lingering fear, now this bandit is getting more and more rampant. They dared to kill people in broad daylight and did not leave a single person alive. If one knew it was like this, the Jing family would regret coming to the Ding capital. Shin Miao's eyes drooped down. Whether the Jing family was silenced by bandits or not, it would depend on one's thoughts. But Shin Miao knew that Sun Tianzhang's methods had always been swift and decisive, just like in the court. This matter started because of Jing Chu Chu and Sun Kai Nan lost his life. How could Sun Tianjing be willing? Shin Miao believed that if it was possible, Sun Tianjing could not wait to silence the entire Shin family. But the Shin family wasn't the Jing family. The Jing family would still have the same ending as in the previous lifetime, losing their lives because of Jing Chu Chu's greed. Now that Jing Chu Chu was still in Sun Tianzhang's hands, Sun Tianjing would not let Jing Chu Chu die easily. To live in despair like this was perhaps more painful than death. But this had nothing to do with her anymore. Shen Miao said to Guyu, "What about the prepared things?" Guyu said, "It is in the chest, but..." Guyu was somewhat hesitant. "Young lady, you really want, go and get it." Shen Miao interrupted her words. After an hour, 4 people walked out of the western courtyard side door of the Shen residence. Among the 3 of them, the leader was a young gentleman with delicate features. He was wearing a moon-white robe and a hat, and could be considered as an elegant gentleman. It was just that he was a little short, but he was somewhat adorable like a carved jade. His pair of bright eyes were rarely clear. With this kind of looks, he would be sought after even in a small brothel. Chapter 364. Following closely behind him were 2 people dressed as attendants. But when he walked, he was a little clumsy and awkward. Behind the follower was a guard. Compared to the 3 of them, he was much taller. "Do not be afraid," Shen Miao said, "be more courageous and do not give yourself away." These 3 people were not others but Shen Miao, Jingzhi, Guyu and Mo Qing. Jingzhi and Guyu were not used to wearing male's clothing, so they had a sullen face and were somewhat afraid, but Shen Miao was very calm, which made Mo Qing's heart have some misgivings. However, she did not know that when she was a hostage in the Qin state, she was teased by the royal family. They made her dress up as a man for several months. Now that he was acting, he looked very lively. When the 3 of them boarded the carriage, Mo Qing personally drove the carriage and Guyu asked Shen Miao, "Young lady, are we really going to Bao Xianglu?" "Of course." "But..." Guyu said, "We have words that cannot be said outside. If someone sees young lady visiting a brothel..." She could not continue because Guyu did not know what would happen when a female visited a brothel. Bao Xianglu is a business place, and a business place only needs to pay money. Those who visit the brothel do not care about etiquette and morals, and it is originally a place to indulge in debauchery. No one would notice if they were to put on a show. Jingzhi and Guyu looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Shen Miao's ideas were very big, and once she decided on something, even 9 bulls would not be able to pull her back. Moreover, there would always be all kinds of high-sounding reasons. Now that he had come this far, he could only wait and see. In the elegant room of Kuai Huolu, someone lifted the curtain and walked in. Ji Yushu said, "Third older brother Xie, you came just in time. There is something to tell you, Prince Ding." "Ha!" Gao Yang suddenly exclaimed. His hand that was holding the wine cup paused as he muttered to himself, "Why is it different this time?" "What's different?" Xie Jingxing said as he sat down by the window. He poured himself a cup of tea and followed Gao Yang's gaze. Below Bao Xianglu, a horse carriage stopped and a few people came down. The person in the lead was Mo Qing. Behind Mo Qing, there were 3 youths that followed. In the past, the one with the surname Mo always came and went alone. Why are there so many people here today? Is this also Shen Miao's order? Gao Yang propped his chin up and sized him up. "Let me see." Ji Yushu stretched his neck to take a look, and a flash of inspiration appeared. Could it be that Shen young lady is actually using money to reward servants who do well? If the servants did a good job, they would be rewarded with a day trip to Bao Xianglu. I also want to be a servant in Shen young lady's residence. Step aside. Gao Yang pushed Ji Yushu's head away and said, "Why do I feel that these few people look somewhat familiar?" Before he finished his words, he saw Xie Jingxing spurt out a mouthful of tea. "Third brother." Ji Yushu, who was sprayed all over, jumped up in a flurry and said angrily as he tidied up his clothes, "What are you doing?" Xie Jingxing ignored him and stared at the few people downstairs in surprise. They actually came by themselves. "Myself." Gao Yang caught on to the meaning behind his words and looked down carefully. When he saw it clearly, he almost fell over on his back. Who else could it be if it was not Shen Miao who was the leader that was carved from jade? Under the heavens, there were really females who dressed as males to visit brothels. If one did not see it with one's own eyes, Gao Yang would have thought that such things would only appear in dramas. Shen Miao followed Mo Qing into Bao Xianglu. When the young lady at the door saw Mo Qing, she went up to greet him with a smile. "Lord Mo, it is better to pick young lady Luing." Mo Qing nodded his head. That young lady then seemed to notice the few people behind Mo Qing and hesitated for a moment. These few. Chapter 365. Together with me. Mo Qing said. That young lady was surprised for a moment before thinking of something and looked at Mo Qing mischievously. One did not think that Master Mo would have this kind of taste. No matter, the more people there are, the livelier it is. When Jingzhe and Guyu heard it, their faces immediately turned red and Mo Qing also felt somewhat uncomfortable. The calmest person in the group was only Shen Miao. That young lady led them to Lu Ying's little building. Mo Qing had almost become a frequent visitor of Bao Xianglu and there was no young lady who did not know of him, thus it was not strange at all. It was just that it was rare to see such delicate and pretty gentlemen like Shen Miao and the rest, especially Shen Miao who looked like she was carved from jade. From time to time there would be young ladies who would look over with a smile. When they reached Lu Ying's little building, the young lady who led the way knocked on the door and spoke. "Lu Ying, Master Mo is here to see you." Finishing, she then said to Mo Qing and the rest, "This servant will go down first." Mo Qing pushed the door open and walked in. There was a female sitting in front of the dressing mirror with clothes loosely draped over her body and her black hair was like a waterfall as she was dressing up in front of the mirror. Hearing the commotion, she did not even turn her head back as she said, "You came early today." Jingzhe and Guyu looked at Mo Qing strangely before Mo Qing coughed twice. "Not only me." Lu Ying's hand that was dressing paused and when she turned her head over, she was first startled when she saw Shen Miao and the rest before a trace of anger climbed up her pretty face. What is the meaning of this? Not waiting for Mo Qing to finish, Lu Ying sneered, "If you want to play like this, it is possible but you have to pay twice the amount of money." When the words were said, not only Jingzhe and Guyu, even Shen Miao looked at Mo Qing strangely. Mo Qing was somewhat embarrassed as he did not know why Lu Ying, who treated him with a much better attitude a few days ago, flew into a rage today and that kind of cold alienation started to appear again. "Young lady Lu Ying, this one is Mo Qing's master." Shen Miao opened her mouth to break the deadlock and smiled gently. "We are not here to play today." Jingzhe and Guyu wanted to cover their eyes and could not wait to pretend that they did not know. Hearing the word mistress, Lu Ying was stunned and her eyes vigilantly sized up Shen Miao from head to toe. Shen Miao walked over and Jingzhe and Guyu quickly moved the stool in front of the table closer to Lu Ying and waited for Shen Miao to sit down. "You are the one who let Mo Qing come to my shop every day?" Lu Ying asked. Shen Miao nodded. Lu Ying supported her chin with one hand and her gaze suddenly became flirtatious. "This servant does not understand gentlemen's actions. Could it be that you have fallen in love with me?" Mo Qing looked up at the sky. Lu Ying was after all a female in a brothel and when she did such a brothel, it could be said that she had reached the point of perfection. Jingzhe and Guyu revealed a look of disdain. Shen Miao looked at her. "What does young lady Lu Ying think?" Lu Ying carefully sized up Shen Miao and her gaze paused for a moment before suddenly smiling. "This young lady wants to play the fake phoenix trick in the play script." She actually saw through Shen Miao's female identity. Shen Miao was not surprised. She was born delicate and pretty and when she was dressed up as a male, her skin was as white as jade and her brows were similar. She was excessively delicate when she walked, so when one looked seriously, naturally it would not escape the eyes of others. I want to redeem your freedom, Shen Miao said. Lu Ying could not laugh anymore. She had been sold to Bao Xianglu for quite some time, and now naturally it could not be compared to that time when she was extremely popular. There were fewer and fewer people asking about her, not to mention spending a large sum of money to redeem her freedom. Lu Ying does not understand young lady's meaning. I was fortunate enough to obtain a handkerchief, and it was a rare double-sided embroidery. There were only a few dozen people in the entire country who knew how to do double-sided embroidery. Shen Miao said, after many inquiries, one came to know that it was done by young lady Lu Ying. You? Lu Ying's hands tightened. How did you know that it was done by me? Shen Miao waved her hands. It is not important how I know. The important thing is that I have an embroidery workshop and lack an embroidery lady. Does young lady Lu Ying have the interest to manage the embroidery workshop for me? Lu Ying looked at her incredulously and suddenly laughed like a flower. Young lady, could it be that you want me to turn over a new leaf? Jingzhe and Gu Yu were somewhat dissatisfied with Lu Ying's attitude at this moment, and Mo Qing also slightly frowned. How many prostitutes longed to wash themselves clean, and Lu Ying was still young. If she washed herself clean, she might have a good future. I was sold to this place from the start. Lu Ying's face was frivolous. What I learned is bedroom skills and only know how to serve and please a male. Young lady, let me manage the embroidery workshop and sell hard labor. I am not able to live through that kind of bitter days. Not afraid that I will collapse the embroidery workshop. Shen Miao stared at her and smiled gently. Whether it collapses or not is my matter, but whether to do it or not is your matter. She played it down. It is just that. This matter is dispensable to me, but to you, it is the only way to leave this place. There are thousands of people in the world and tens of thousands of industries. Everyone has their own way of living. To me, one do not feel that a female in a brothel is lower than others, but the world's view is so. Shen Miao said, just like my garde-mo. She is also a slave, but no one would look down on her. My personal maids, some people would even envy them. The world is like this, and people are divided into 3, 6, and 9 ranks. Who would not want to be a person above others, and who would want to be ridiculed by others every day? Chapter 366. There are thousands of people in the world, thousands of industries, and everyone has their own way of living. To me, I don't think that the women in the brothel are lower than others, but that's how the world sees it. Shen Miao said, just like my garde-mo, he is also a slave, but no one would look down on him. My personal maids, some people would even envy them. The world is like this, and people are divided into different ranks. Who doesn't want to be above others? Who wants to be ridiculed by others every day? You. What Lu Ying hated the most was that people would talk about her background, and when she heard that, she was even angrier. Shen Miao said, you might as well consider it. Since young lady looks down on people who have fallen into prostitution, why is there a need to say such words to me? Lu Ying was not angry but laughed instead. I look down on people who are willing to be reduced to prostitution. Shen Miao stood up and said, after a few days, garde-mo will come over again. Young lady Lu Ying need not be anxious to answer me. But, using one's looks to please others will never end well. Shen Miao gave Mo Qing a look, and Mo Qing quickly took out an ingot of silver and placed it on the table. Lu Ying swept a glance at him, and there was some anger on her face. Mo Qing was also very embarrassed. Shen Miao did not intend to stay long and nodded her head to Lu Ying before getting up to leave. One did not know what Lu Ying looked like behind him. When they were out of Bao Xianglu's doors, Jingzhe then said indignantly, Gu. Young master had good intentions to redeem her but did not think that she would not appreciate it. My good intentions are not rewarded. Mo Qing wanted to say something but finally endured it. Guyu asked, young lady, are we going back now? Shen Miao did not answer and her body did not move. Guyu found it somewhat strange and saw that Shen Miao seemed to be looking at something. Following her gaze, she saw that the place she was looking at was the opposite corner of the street and there was a green-clad person standing there, looking at the little building of Bao Xianglu. Before Guyu was able to speak, she saw Shen Miao lifting her feet and walking over. Under the eaves, the green-robed man stood straight, his eyes staring in the direction of the Luiying small building. He was so engrossed that he did not even know when someone had come to his side. A light cough interrupted his train of thought. He saw 4 people standing in front of him. The young man in the lead was dressed in a moon-white robe. He had delicate features and looked like he was carved out of jade. Who knew which family he was from? At this moment, she looked at him with a faint smile on her lips. Pei Lang was stunned. He felt that this young man looked familiar. The young man nodded at him. Mr. Pei. Shen Miao. Pei Lang's eyes widened slightly. He looked at the attendants and guards behind Shen Miao and looked at Shen Miao again. Most likely he was somewhat shocked and said, You. Why are you dressed like this? It was not rare for a female to dress up as a male. In Mingqi, many young ladies would occasionally dress up as a male for convenience, and when they dress up, they would have a different kind of beauty. But Shen Miao. Pei Lang looked at the handsome youth in front of him and did not know what to say for a moment. I just came out from Bao Xianglu, Shen Miao said. Pei Lang coughed all of a sudden, and his face turned red. It was not uncommon for a woman to dress up as a man, but this was the first time he had heard of a woman dressed up as a man visiting a brothel. But Shen Miao still had a very magnanimous look, without a trace of shyness. Shen Miao suddenly took a step forward and moved closer to Pei Lang. With a paw sound, she opened the fan in her hands and covered both of their faces. She softly said at the other end of the fan, everyone said that the young ladies of Bao Xianglu are the most beautiful in the world, so I specially went for a stroll. Recently there are many new Persian dancers, and each of them are incomparably fragrant. Even if Pei Lang was calm and composed outside, and was able to deal with high officials and noble people with ease, but facing Shen Miao's slightly ambiguous actions, he was somewhat at a loss. Not to mention that Shen Miao was talking about all these messy things, it made him suddenly have an illusion, as if the person in front of him was really that noble gentleman who walked on horseback and slept with flowers and willows, and was discussing with him which family's dancers were more beautiful. Chapter 367. Nonsense. Remembering his identity as a teacher, Pei Lang squeezed out 2 words from between his teeth. Shen Miao gently smiled and her eyes curved like a crescent moon, almost like an orchid. She said, but I have ordered young lady Lu Ying's card. As soon as these words came out, Pei Lang's body stiffened. Shen Miao kept her folding fan and looked at him with a smile. I see that Gentleman Pei has been looking at Lu Ying's little building for a long time. Is it that you are also yearning for young lady Lu Ying? Pei Lang stared at Shen Miao and his calm expression suddenly turned fierce. Shen Miao remained unmoved and continued to smile happily as she pointed to Kuai Huo Lu. Since Mr. Pei is also interested in young lady Lu Ying, why not go in with me for a cup of wine and chat about beauties? Her actions were obviously frivolous, but there was a kind of irresistible majesty about her. She folded her fan horizontally in front of her chest and went upstairs on her own. She left a sentence from afar, good wine and chatting with beautiful women is the happiest thing in the world. Even though Jingzhi, Guyu and Mo Qing trio did not understand the meaning of Shen Miao's words, they had never refuted Shen Miao's decisions and immediately followed in. Pei Lang stood there alone. After a moment of hesitation, he made up his mind and followed her in. At the window seat upstairs, Ji Shu suddenly jumped up. Look. I already said that Shin young lady admires that Pei Lang and went in such a big circle to pick young lady Lu Ying's name. It was all so that she could speak with Pei Lang today. Gao Yang ignored him and secretly guessed. Just now she used the fan to cover her face. What did she say to Pei Lang? Gao Yang shook his head. She used the fan to cover it. Could it be that she knows that you can read lips? When he said that, Gao Yang looked at Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing shrugged his shoulders, indicating that he did not agree or disagree. Speaking of which, just now the action of Shin young lady waving the fan was so elegant that it was even more outstanding than me. Ji Yushu sighed. How could such a unbeautiful person fancy a poor scholar? Even if you follow me, it's still better than that pretty boy who can't even afford to visit a brothel. Xie Jingxing stood up and Ji Yushu asked, Where are you going? Of course it's to listen to what they have to say. Xie Jingxing smiled meaningfully. I want to see what kind of chess piece Pei Lang is. In the elegant room of Kuai Huo Lu, Mo Qing stood by the door while Jingzhe and Gu Yu stood on both sides with their heads lowered, as if they did not exist. At the table, Shen Miao was pouring wine. The wine was Lu wine. Its color was like amber and it smelled fragrant. This wine wasn't intoxicating. As long as one's alcohol tolerance wasn't too bad, drinking a little would be fine. Shen Miao poured 2 cups and her posture when pouring the wine was very elegant. Her fingers grabbed the handle of the wine pot and when the crystal clear wine was poured into the small jade cup, the sound was very pleasing to the ear. Pei Lang watched helplessly as Shen Miao pushed a cup of wine in front of him and said with a smile, Gentlemen, please drink. Shen Miao. Pei Lang directly called her by her name and his expression had not eased since he entered. He said, What exactly do you want to do? Mr. Pei is actually so anxious to talk about beauties without wine. Isn't it like a cow chewing peonies? Shen Miao looked at him calmly. Pei Lang was dumbfounded by her words. He had stayed in Guangwentang for several years and the people that he met were all respectful to him. Even the most mischievous student would not speak to him in such a frivolous tone. If it was other people, it would be all right, but it was Shen Miao. Pei Lang always felt that Shen Miao was not a frivolous person and speaking like this made him unable to figure out the other party's background. Seeing that Pei Lang did not speak for a long time, Shen Miao gently laughed. She said, Just joking with Mr. Pei. Why is Mr. Pei so nervous? Chapter 368. When she said those words, her eyes were clear but there seemed to be some mischievousness. It was clearly the appearance of an innocent young female but in a moment there was a kind of unknowingly charming charm. Pei Lang's gaze slightly paused. This wine is Lu wine. Shen Miao picked up the wine cup and raised it towards Pei Lang. Pei Lang's expression suddenly changed but Shen Miao did not seem to notice his expression and said slowly, The wine brewed in the Lu Qi region is also amber in color. The Lu wine in Kuai Huo Lu must have been transported over from the Lu Qi region. Pei Lang looked at her and suddenly picked up the wine cup on the table and drank the wine in one gulp. This wine is not intoxicating. Shen Miao said with a smile, otherwise if others see it, they would think that Teacher Pei is a wine jar. Her tone was coquettish but her words made Pei Lang's palms slightly moist. She said, Speaking of which, the people of Lu are good at drinking wine and drink from jars. Just now Teacher Pei's manner was somewhat like a Lu person. Pei Lang pursed his lips and did not speak but his gentle eyes were somewhat distorted. Shen Miao supported her cheek with one hand and her face was slightly flushed from the wine. Even if she was not intoxicated, there was a faint blush on her face and when she squinted her eyes, she looked like a crabapple sleeping in spring. But because she was dressed as a male, it was refreshing and pretty and there was a different kind of charm. She said, I remember that 10 years ago, there was a prefectural magistrate of Lu who also seemed to have the surname Pei. If one did not know, one would think that teacher Pei and that person were from the same family. Pei Lang suddenly placed the wine cup on the table and at the same time, Mo Qing glared and his right hand pressed on the sword at his waist. Unfortunately, that prefectural magistrate Pei's residence was involved in an old matter of the previous dynasty and his entire family was beheaded by His Majesty. In the entire residence, the males were all executed and the daughters were exiled to be prostitutes for officials. Shen Miao could not stop laughing. One heard that prefectural magistrate Pei's residence had a pair of outstanding children and they were still young but died in this storm. Pei Lang's lips were slightly trembling as he asked word by word, "Who exactly are you?" Shen Miao gestured for her to keep quiet and drank another cup of wine. Her snow-white face flushed red as she said, "Actually, I was fortunate to hear of a secret. Seeing that Gentleman Pei is also surnamed Pei, there is no harm in sharing it with Gentleman Pei." That prefectural magistrate Pei's residence had the ability to send a pair of children to escape and avoid disaster. Unfortunately, the officials were hot on their heels, so they could only protect one person. Hence, prefectural magistrate Pei managed to protect his son, but his daughter was captured by the officials. She regretfully shook her head. The government officials are like wolves and tigers. They never show mercy to the families of sinners. That little girl was caught, how could she have a good ending? Shen Miao sighed. If I were to say, that prefectural magistrate Pei knew that his daughter would fall into the tiger's mouth and her life would be worse than death, but he still pushed his daughter out. It is somewhat heartless. Pei Lang closed his eyes, a pained expression on his face. Mr. Pei, you must be feeling the same way. Shen Miao smiled as she looked at him, but one would think that this has nothing to do with Mr. Pei, because Mr. Pei is not from Lu. Mr. Pei is a merchant that was born in the Ding capital. Speaking of these, it is only because this Lu wine is intoxicating and one was momentarily sentimental. The gentleness on Pei Lang's face suddenly disappeared and was replaced with a strong vigilance and precaution. He said, "This is General Shen's intention." Shen Miao shook her head. "My father dotes on me and gave me an embroidery workshop. The embroidery workshop is lacking an embroidery lady." Shen Miao dragged her voice. One heard that more than 10 years ago, prefectural magistrate Pei's eldest daughter knew double-sided embroidery since young. Coincidentally, this Bao Xiang Lu's young lady Lu Ying also knew double-sided embroidery. I thought that since both of them were reduced to prostitution and knew double-sided embroidery, perhaps young lady Lu Ying and that sinner's young lady had some relation. As for me, I had some compassion and saved her from prostitution. Shen Miao looked at Pei Lang and said, "Mr. Pei, do you think that this student did the right thing?" Chapter 369. She referred to herself as a student. Her black hair was wrapped in a man's official hat. Her smiling appearance made her look like a handsome young man. But in those clear eyes, there were deep secrets and intentions that no one could see through or guess at. She pretended to be charming and quick-witted, but she vividly displayed the hidden daggers behind the smiles of the officials in the official world. Dealing with her was like walking on a tightrope at the edge of a cliff. There were hidden meanings in her words, and it was hard to tell whether she was a friend or foe. Pei Lang tilted his head. "What do you think?" Shen Miao smiled. Her smile was pure, as if she was really happy that she had done a good deed. She said, "I think it's very good. Even if that prefectural magistrate Pei's son found out about elder sister's whereabouts and personally came to redeem elder sister's freedom, based on Miss Pei's resentment towards prefectural magistrate Pei and her own temperament, she would not be willing. Instead, you'll ruin your life." Pei Lang did not speak. Some people in the world are originally jade, but after being mixed in a pile of rocks for a long time, they become rocks. But there were some people who hid their arrogance in their bones. Even if they were ground to dust, the arrogance in their bones would not be shaken. It was said that although Prefectural Magistrate Pei had committed a crime, he was an arrogant person. Presumably, the son and daughter that he taught would not be inferior to him. You say, Shen Miao looked at Pei Lang, would that young lady rather live with the identity of a noble lady who has fallen into prostitution or live with the identity of a prostitute who has washed herself clean? After saying so much, Pei Lang sneered, "What do you want me to do?" "Mr. Pei, you're smart. I knew I couldn't hide it from you. One little clue reveals the general trend, and one can understand the meaning of a song. That's what they say." Shen Miao was not stingy with her compliments to Pei Lang before saying, "Gentleman Pei is a talented person and has knowledge in his chest, why not enter officialdom?" "Shen Miao!" Pei Lang suddenly shouted. He did not know that Shen Miao's words had poked his sore spot as he suddenly became agitated, and even Jing Zhe and Gu Yu looked at him. Pei Lang said furiously, "Don't even think about it. Gentleman Pei need not be anxious and might as well listen to me calmly." Shen Miao smiled, perhaps Gentleman Pei was frightened by my story just now. Feeling that in the officialdom, if one is not careful, one would implicate the entire residence and it would be dangerous and full of misfortune. Moreover, after entering officialdom, one would not be as comfortable as being a carefree gentleman. Pei Lang's expression gradually recovered, as if he had returned to that he was a gentleman. "But you are all alone now. You don't have a lover or a family, so you don't have to worry about being implicated. Furthermore, in this world, those who stand high can see far. Those who stand high can also do more. If he wanted to protect the people he wanted to protect, it was not enough to just rely on a teacher. Even though teacher is able to have students all over the world, but..." Shen Miao calmly and leisurely raised her cup. It was obvious that she was smiling, but in a moment there was an indifferent coolness. She said, "When something really happens, the noble families would avoid it like the plague, so how would they do their best? It is to be the right as it is to be as to be strong. By one's strength as one can. As. Who taught you to say these words and what is the purpose? What benefits is there for him if I enter officialdom?" Shen Miao gently smiled. Pei Lang, this person looked gentle and indifferent and was indeed a gentleman who did not care about external things and wholeheartedly devoted himself to teaching. But whenever he discussed about matters, he would always be able to get to the crux of the matter. In the previous life, Fu Xiuyi thought of all ways to win Pei Lang over to be his advisor and even ascended to the throne of the nation's tutor. It was not by chance. Why does Gentleman Pei ask what benefits are there for others but not ask what benefits are there for oneself? Shen Miao did not answer his question but cleverly went around in a roundabout way and replied indifferently, "Getting promoted, getting rich and marrying a wife, at the end the one benefiting is only gentleman yourself. When doing business, how would one ask others how much money one earned but not mention how much one earned?" Chapter 370. How did I profit? Pei Lang said lightly. Teacher did not profit but young lady Lu Ying did. Shen Miao smiled as she looked at him and her bright eyes flashed. A female turning good and having a steady reliance for the rest of her life is equivalent to saving another's life. Pei Lang stared at Shen Miao. If at this time he still did not understand Shen Miao's intention, then he would be a real fool. After entering officialdom, what do I need to do? Pei Lang asked. Shen Miao looked at him with satisfaction. It was Pei Lang's usual style to weigh the pros and cons in the shortest time and make the most advantageous choice. But her mind could not help but think of the time when Fu Xiuyi deposed the crown prince. She also knelt down and begged Pei Lang. Pei Lang's tone of discussion was as rational and ruthless as now. Now the chips were in her hands and this once high and mighty imperial tutor could only be manipulated by her. Shen Miao's heart floated with a trace of shallow comfort. This comfort was shown on her face and became joy. Actually, it is nothing much. Shen Miao said, teacher is overflowing with talent, and even if one does not take the initiative to enter officialdom, 1 year later there would naturally be noble people who would solicit you. One only hoped that at that time teacher would not reject the noble person and think of ways to agree to it. Of course on the surface one would agree, but one must be used by me. You want me to be an insider? Pei Lang looked at Shen Miao incredulously. Shen Miao shook her head. How can it be considered as an insider? Teacher can be promoted and get rich. I guarantee that teacher's identity will not be exposed and only need to tell me some news at certain times. Pei Lang was silent for a moment before looking at Shen Miao. Who is the noble person that you are talking about? Shen Miao smiled gently. Prince Ding, Fu Xiu Yi. Pei Lang was startled and involuntarily looked at Shen Miao again. He knew that Shen Miao was in love with Prince Ding in the past to the point that it became a laughing stock in the city, and also knew that Prince Ding, that kind of hidden person, would be dismissive of Shen Miao. Afterwards one did not know when it started, but Shen Miao seemed to have changed into another person. Pei Lang had always felt that there was someone behind Shen Miao giving pointers, but at this moment thinking about it, he could not help but guess. Could it be that it was because love turned to hate that she even schemed against Prince Ding? But just because love was not reciprocated, one would do such things. Pei Lang was confused. The girl in front of him was pretty in men's clothing. After drinking wine, there was a faint blush on her cheeks. She was in the prime of her youth, and her appearance was fair and lovely. Her eyes were like a newborn cub's, untainted by even a speck of dust. However, in her every movement, there was an inadvertent flirtatiousness. Pei Lang felt a little uncomfortable. To him, talking to a young lady of Shen Miao's age was like an elder talking to a younger generation, or at least like an older brother talking to a younger sister. But at this moment, it seemed that he was the one at a disadvantage. His every move was being led by the nose, and he couldn't even resist. What do you want? Pei Lang had asked this question many times, and until now, he was not sure if the person who did these things was someone else or Shen Miao herself. It was as if his trump card had been seen by Shen Miao, but he did not even understand Shen Miao's initial purpose. He was absolutely suppressed. I don't want to do anything. I just want to make a decision that's good for me and Sir. Shen Miao smiled as she tucked a lock of hair behind her ear, making her neck as white as jade. She said, Teacher, are you going to agree or not? I can only answer here. Pei Lang asked. You have. Shen Miao pointed to the wine pot. Time for a pot of wine. After drinking this pot of wine, teacher will tell me the answer. No need. Pei Lang interrupted her words. If you can do what you promised, I will agree to it. There was a moment of silence in the room. After a moment, Shen Miao smiled. She lifted the wine pot and filled the 2 empty cups with wine before picking up the cup in front of her and made a gesture to toast with Pei Lang. Chapter 371. Pei Lang hesitated for a moment before raising his cup. There was a strange feeling in his heart. To drink with one's own student in a restaurant. His heart was somewhat hot. I wish Mister's future bright and boundless prospects. Shen Miao smiled as she drank the wine in one gulp. She drank it very quickly and a trace of wine flowed out from the corner of her mouth, across her slightly pointed chin and into her white collar. Pei Lang looked away. No matter how beautiful a budding young female was, she was still young and inexperienced. Especially Shen Miao, this kind of gentle and delicate beauty, she was dignified and reserved. Pei Lang was not a person who loved beauty, but for a moment, his mind was in a mess as he felt that this was not right and out of place. A trace of carefreeness flashed in Shen Miao's eyes. Most likely it was because she drank the wine that some hidden emotions in her heart came out like a sin. She remembered that Pei Lang had a dignified and solemn appearance and was most particular about reason. In front of Pei Lang, she vividly interpreted the 4 words motherly model of the world, but at the end she was still defeated by Pei Lang's pros and cons. That was the imperial tutor who could decide Fu Ming's life and death in the previous lifetime, but now she was holding on to his weak spot. In front of Pei Lang, she had the bearing of an empress and could not even cry for Wan Yu. Now, she did not have the dignity of an empress and did not have the virtues of a woman. She dressed up as a male, went to a brothel and drank with a teacher. Her actions were frivolous and unrestrained. What could Pei Lang do? He also could not do anything to her. But that carefreeness was only for a short moment. When Pei Lang agreed, she knew that there was no need to continue pestering him. The flirtatious look that was caused by the wine faded away and inch by inch she became sober. She stood up and lifted her chin slightly, returning to that slightly dignified Shen Miao. After young Lady Luing has settled down, one will inform Mr. of the location of the embroidery workshop. Shen Miao nodded her head. The money has already been paid. Mr. Please drink slowly. One cannot often drink the wine of the Lu. One did not know if the last sentence was sarcasm or politeness, but it made Pei Lang's brows slightly wrinkled as he watched Shen Miao leave with a few people. He picked up the wine and drank a mouthful. It should be a mellow wine, but it was surprisingly astringent in his mouth. Walking out of the door, Jing Zhi and Gu Yu did not dare to speak as both of them could see that Shen Miao was not in a good mood at the moment. Pei Lang's words made them confused in the clouds and sensitively felt that this matter was not a small matter, thus they did not dare to speak easily. When the cold wind blew, the blush on her face dissipated. Shen Miao closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, there was only coldness in her eyes. As for Pei Lang, she still held a grudge against him for standing idly by the side. No matter how hard she tried to hide it, it still leaked out a little. However, his goal was achieved. Let's go back. She walked towards the carriage. In another hidden room adjacent to Kwai Huo Lu, the few people in the room were all silent. Just now he had seen a good show. At first he thought it was full of fun, but now that the person had left, the tea had cooled. Thinking about it carefully, he couldn't help but feel astonished. Ji Yushu swallowed his saliva and seemed to want to break this dull atmosphere. It is really good to have a relationship with this building. At least it is more convenient to eavesdrop on the walls. Not only can one listen, one can also see. Very good. At the back of the carved pillar, there was a huge colored glass that was hidden by the thin railing. It was said that it was colored glass that came from the Western Hemisphere. One end could not see this end, but this end could see that end. In addition, there was a copper pillar that was full of small holes, so everything that was said could be heard clearly. But when Ji Yushu finished speaking, the other 2 people in the room did not answer him. Gao Yang used his folding fan to support his chin, which was his usual appearance when he was thinking. Xie Jingxing bent his elbow to support his head as he played with the teacup in his hands while thinking about something. Unable to stand such an atmosphere, Ji Yushu opened his mouth. Both of you do not remain silent. Isn't it just a matter of Prefectural Magistrate Pei's residence in the Lu province? Pei Lang is Prefectural Magistrate Pei's son. Shen Miao's story was easily told because she believed that Pei Lang could understand, and the 3 people here were not fools, so they understood after thinking about it. The Lu province's Sinner Prefectural Magistrate Pei had a pair of children. The older sister was Lu Ying and the younger brother was the current Pei Lang. During the escape, in order to protect Pei Lang, the Pei family arranged people to abandon Lu Ying, and Lu Ying eventually fell into prostitution. And Pei Lang had already arranged a retreat route for the Pei family and turned into a Ding capital person. He lived here since young and was born into a merchant family. His parents passed away a few years ago and now he was alone. His natural background was not discovered by anyone for many years. However, Xie Jingxing's lips lazily hooked up, so how did she know about the details that Bai Shaoxing was unable to find out? At the end, his voice turned cold and his peach blossom eyes were filled with murderous intent. Chapter 372. How so? Ji Yushu asked. Gao Yang touched his chin. Since one wants to deal with Prince Ding, it is not just Prince Ding's side. The Crown Prince, Prince Shou, and Prince Li, which side is Shen Miao's people on? Not on any side. Xie Jingxing said. Ji Yushu felt strange. Why is it not on any side? Xie Jingxing's eyes slightly slowed down. Pei Lang is not an ordinary person but has yet to enter officialdom and is still immature. Just now all of you have heard that Shen Miao's moves, Shen Axayan may not be able to use it as neatly as her. Slippery and slippery, not admit, not deny, not decline and also not accept. The officials who had been in and out of the sea of officials for many years might not be able to do it as smoothly as her. Shen Axayan was a military general and Luo Shuayan was also a military general, so where did Shen Miao learn this? Was there an expert guiding the Shen family? He originally thought so but now it seemed that it was Shen Miao's own idea. If she was the crown prince or other prince's people, she would not use such a step-by-step planning method. Each prince had their own power behind them, so how would they use such a clumsy method? However, she was able to maximize the goal that she could achieve within the scope of her own ability. One could not help but wonder how big of a storm she would be able to stir if she was given enough background and power. Even if she did not have any chips in her hands now, she could still slowly cultivate chess pieces. The world was like a chess game and in this chess game of Ming Qi, there were too many people playing. But Xie Jingxing had never placed Shen Miao in it. She was a weak female and had no motive. But now Xie Jingxing could see her ambition through the young female's ability to win over a hero with a cup of wine. But we still do not know how she knew about Pei Lang's background. Ji Yushu said, even the Feng Xian pawn shop did not manage to find out. Prefectural Magistrate Pei's residents used all their strength to protect this son of his, so they must have made full preparations. Pei Lang indeed did not disappoint his father's expectations. He did not seek revenge nor did he have any resentment and concealed his identity to become a teacher. No one would pay attention to him but Shen Miao saw through his tricks and even used Lu Ying as a bargaining chip to counter Pei Lang. One did not know where she got the news from, just like the Qin brothers previously. Do not care about her. Xie Jingxing said, is the request for Marshal written? I did. Gao Yang frowned. But are you sure? From the start, there was no turning back. Also, the other side hasn't received any news about your plan yet. If they don't agree, do as I say. Xie Jingxing stood up. Returning to the Shen residence, in the western courtyard, Shen Miao changed her clothes and just as she took off her hair, she saw Bai Lu rushing in and said, young lady, Furen asked you to go to the room as there is an important matter to discuss. The end of the year had passed, and it was almost spring. Because Shen Axayan requested Emperor Wen Hui to stay in the Ding capital for half a year more, Luo Shuaiyan's life was much more relaxed. He would go all out to buy clothes and jewelry for Shen Miao or let Shen Qiu bring Shen Miao to eat, drink and play. Sometimes Shen Miao herself felt that she was raised by Shen Axayan and wife as a hedonistic son of rich parents. Shen Miao casually tied up her hair and went to Luo Shuaiyan's room. Upon entering the house, one was surprised to see that Shen Axayan and Shen Qiu were also there. Seeing her enter, Luo Shuiyan quickly pulled her to sit beside her and said, "Today, what did Zhao Zhao go out for?" Shen Miao let Bai Lu and Shuang Jiang stay in the room, and if anyone asked, she would say that she went out for a stroll. She said, casually strolled and passed by Kuai Huo Lu and brought a few jars of strong wine for father and eldest brother. Worthy of being father's darling. Shen Xian's eyes brightened when he heard that. This Ding capital's wine is too sweet and greasy. How can it be considered as wine? It is still the strong wine that is better. Satisfying. Chapter 373. Shen Qiu was also happy. Little sister is so thoughtful. All you know is to drink. Luo Shuiyan rolled her eyes at the father and son pair and said, those things can be bought by the servants. Zhao Zhao doesn't need to care about them. You this woman. Shen Xian was unhappy again. It is all Zhao Zhao's kind intentions. How can the servants buy the same as Zhao Zhao? How short-sighted. It was rare for Shen Miao to have such a close relationship with them, and Shen Xian was very happy. Even if Shen Miao brought back 2 jars of water, he would be happy to the heavens, so naturally he would refute Luo Shuiyan's words. Short-sighted. Luo Shuiyan squinted at him. Foreign is happy or angry. Shen Xian immediately said, I am a stinky brat who is short-sighted. Shen Xian slapped Shen Qiu's head. Luo Shuiyan was too lazy to see the father and son putting on a show and looked at Shen Miao. Zhao Zhao, the reason for coming here today is actually because there is a matter to discuss with you. Mother, please speak. You've heard about the separation of the family. Your father and I have also thought it through. We have to buy a new house. There was a house in the east of the city that was not bad. He could buy some maids to clean and serve him. It's just. Luo Shuiyan looked at Shen Miao and was somewhat embarrassed. Previously, when your father and I went to the northwest region, we left you behind and felt that with the protection of the Shen family, you would be more stable. Now that the family has separated, if your father, your big brother and I leave, you're a girl. It's not safe for you to live alone in a house, and you're also afraid of people talking nonsense. So. Zhao Zhao, are you willing to go to the northwest with me? Shen Miao was slightly startled. Sister, the northwest is so fun. Shen Qiu saw that Shen Miao was in a daze and quickly said, it is not as exaggerated as what they said. Living in the Shaochun city, there are mountains on one side and rivers on the other. There are also many rare birds and beasts. At that time to hunt, one would be able to get a white tiger skin to make a cloak for you. Nonsense. Luo Shuiyan laughed and scolded, your sister is a girl, what does she need the white tiger skin for? Shen Qiu scratched his head. There's also a mine. The gemstones there are huge. Sister can also make jewelry. Shen Miao smiled slightly. She was still somewhat hesitant because there were other things to do in the Ding capital, but after hearing Shen Qiu's words, she had some yearning for the Shaochun city in the northwestern region. Who didn't want to live a carefree life? Who was willing to open their eyes and think about how to scheme against others every day? She sighed in her heart. She would just go along with it. As long as she went this once, she would not have to go next year. All right. Under everyone's expectant gaze, Shen Miao nodded her head, I also want to go and experience it. Luo Shuiyan gave a sigh of relief. Shen Xian laughed loudly, I already said that Zhao Zhao would definitely agree. After coming back for so long, when has Zhao Zhao ever despised us martial artists? Younger sister, Shen Qiu was also excited, when the time comes, I will bring you to see my brothers. They all know that I have a younger sister and have never seen you before. You haven't seen your grandfather's family since you were born, so you won't be able to recognize them this time. Luo Shuiyan's paternal family was a military general in the northwestern region, and they only rushed over once when Shen Miao was born. Afterwards, because they were separated by 1,000 li, they did not see each other in these years. Shen Miao's eyes drooped. In the last lifetime, after Luo Shuiyan's death, the Luo family and the Shen family broke off contact. Shen Miao did not have a deep relationship with the grandfather's family, so she was not clear what kind of ending the Luo family would have. But thinking about it, with Mei Furen's ruthless methods, there would be a way to make Fu Xiaoyi not let off the Luo family. After speaking some more until it was late, Luo Shuiyan then rushed Shen Miao back to her room to rest. After Shen Miao freshened up, she sat in front of the table and looked at the dancing flames and could not help but sigh. If she really wanted to follow Shen Xian to the northwestern region, then she had to settle everything in this half a year. Chapter 374. The only thing worth comforting was the matter of Pei Lang. She had always been very clear that the Shen family was like a big tree that attracted the wind, and it was not good to be involved in the matters of the palace. However, she was just an unmarried daughter and did not have the chance to come into contact with deeper things. Moreover, many things had changed in this life, so he could only let Pei Lang be a spy. Fu Xiaoyi's temperament was suspicious, and he would study a lot of things that were sent to his door, so it was inevitable that he would not investigate her. But 1 year later, Fu Xiaoyi would take the initiative to recruit Pei Lang, and Pei Lang would push the boat with the current, and it would be much easier. As for subduing Pei Lang, there was still a bit of luck involved. That year when Fu Xiaoyi subdued Pei Lang, it was also because one of his subordinates had a friendship with Prefectural Magistrate Pei's residence, thus he was able to find out about Pei Lang's background. At that time it was because Fu Xiaoyi had settled down Luing that Pei Lang was ultimately used by him. The Pei siblings were people who were unmoved by force or persuasion. They had their own ideas. For example, Luing, after falling into prostitution, one could no longer see a trace of the daughter of an official's family. She was at ease being a prostitute, and perhaps recalling her original identity made her feel pain. As for Pei Lang, he didn't even think about revenge. He was content as a teacher. Luing was not willing to admit her own identity and was resentful towards the Pei family for abandoning her to protect her younger brother. When Pei Lang came forward, Luing would resist even more intensely. But Shen Miao gave Luing a docile way to live. To be able to control Luing was to be able to control the guilty Pei Lang. After a few years, Pei Lang, who had gone through many trials and tribulations in court, would be more mature, and when he saw Shen Miao's words today, he would feel that it was full of loopholes. However, Pei Lang had yet to become an official. No matter how smart he was, he still lacked experience. Young lady, it is better to rest early. Jingzhe smiled. Tomorrow one still need to follow Furen to see the residence at the eastern side of the city. Shen Miao nodded. In this half a year, at least the family would be separated, and he would be able to start a new residence. However, she didn't expect that her plans couldn't keep up with the changes. On the morning of the second day, after Shen Miao had her meal, Luo Shuiyan's maid came over and said that after Shen Miao changed her clothes, she would go to the residence. After all, this was a residence that he would be living in the future. Whether it was comfortable or not, he would have to take a look before deciding. But before Shen Miao could dress up, someone came from the palace. She wanted Luo Shuiyan to make a trip to the palace, and the palace maid also said that if there was no problem, Shen Miao could also be brought along. Although he said so, it was almost like an order. Shen Xian and Shen Qiu's faces immediately darkened, and Luo Shuiyan was also a little confused. Even though she was a noblewoman in the capital, she was usually not in the Ding capital and was not familiar with those Furens in the circle of noblewomen. It would be a joke if the one who invited was a lady from the palace. No matter how she thought about it, Luo Shuiyan did not have much of a relationship with the women in the palace. Shen Xian and Shen Qiu thought further. Luo Shuiyan did not have any relationship with the females but was requested to bring Shen Miao along. The drunkard's intention was not in the wine. Could it be that they had some ideas on Shen Miao? Once it was about Shen Miao, they would be especially nervous. Shen Xian said, "It is better for me to accompany Furen to the palace." "What are you going to do?" Luo Shuiyan said, "I didn't invite you here, and you think it's not troublesome enough. I will bring Jiao Jiao along." She hesitated for a moment. With so many people, one would not do anything out of line. Moreover, I am not a female without the strength to truss a chicken. If she wanted to say that if there was anything wrong, one would not necessarily be at a disadvantage if one were to fight. Shen Xian nodded his head. One think that the current situation is not that tense. You can rest assured and go. Luo Shuiyan pulled Shen Miao's hand and boarded the horse carriage that the palace arranged. She originally planned to go to the residence early in the morning, but because of this matter, no one knew if it was a blessing or a curse. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.